Live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Runner not going, and a high fly ball whacked toward right. Fraley going back at the wall. It's a two-run homer. Chip, you want to talk about some hands, some fast hands. You want to talk about Alec Burleson and that swing, his 8th of the season. Swing, high fly ball deep left. Joe going back at the wall. It's gone. Joel Pozo. We've seen him stay back and be off stride and hit a laser someplace. We need one in this spot. Little flare to right. That's down for a hit. Here comes Walker. Benson's throw is up the line. Cardinals win it again. Joel Pozo, the hero, his first career walk-off in a game where the Cardinals had an early lead. Couldn't get anything going for a while. They battled back. And Pozo, the hero.
That is what it sounded like over the weekend on FanDuel Sports Midwest. Alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. T-Bone will be joining us shortly. He is currently listening to Doug Armstrong's media availability. Army will be joining us in studio here in, I would say, about 10 minutes or so. It's TBD, but probably 10-ish minutes. So if you're wondering why we are out at Centene Community Ice Center today, that is why. And we will talk to Doug Armstrong coming up here in just a little bit. Alex, this was kind of a pass-fail week for the St. Louis Cardinals. They needed to do really well against the White Sox. If we're being honest, kind of needed to sweep them.
Yeah.
You got to build up your wins, and as a sidebar, I think it's very unfair that the NL West gets to play against the Rockies this year and the AL Central gets to play against the Chicago White Sox this season. That's like 17 wins that you can just bank.
Absolutely.
So, all right, we'll go ahead and set that aside. So the Cardinals did their job there. They win all 3 of those games. It wasn't pretty. I don't care. They got it done. That's ultimately what matters. Then over the weekend, you're back home taking on the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds at the time were tied with you in the standings. 1-for-1, they were the same team as you. And over the weekend, again, not always pretty, but guess what? You win 2 out of 3. You did your job. The goal was to get to June 23rd and to be within striking distance of the Cubs at the top of the division. And that is exactly where the Cardinals find themselves as of today. Cardinals are 4.5 games back leading into this 4-game series against the Cubs. And in the wild card standings, you are 1 game back. And Alex, the Padres have actually fallen out of that final wild card spot right now. It is the Brewers that maintain, as of today, the final wild card spot in the NL. I've got one thing to throw at you before we get into your thoughts on the weekend and where the Cardinals are as they head into this huge series starting today against the Cubbies. Alex, the Cardinals as of today are 42-36. I'm going to read you their record at this point in the season and a few other recent seasons, okay?
Oh, this is a BK game. I know where this is going.
In 2006.
Oh, jeez.
The Cardinals were 43-35. Again, today they are 42-36. They're 1 game worse at this point in the season than they were in 2006. In 2011, the Cardinals were 41-37 at this point in the season, 1 game worse than they are at this point in the season today. 2014, a good season overall for the Cardinals, 42-36, the exact same record as they are at this point in the season. 2018, that season ended up being okay, you would say?
I would think so.
They ended up that season 42-36 as well at this point. So the Cardinals, it doesn't feel as it did in some of those other seasons, but they have the same record as they did in other seasons. The reason it doesn't feel that way, in my opinion at least, is twofold. 1, the expectations weren't there coming into the season. And 2, the Cubs are so damn good. They're running away with this thing, it feels as though, right now. So they have done their job. They got to the date that they needed to in the prime positioning that they needed to be in. How you feeling now that we're here, Alex? The Cards-Cubs series has officially arrived.
Excited. I couldn't tell you the last time I got excited for a Cards-Cubs series. It's been probably 3 years, because every time in the last few years these teams have gone up against each other, you're talking 2 mediocre teams that there's just no bad blood between the two, even with the history in the conversation. Now,
I would say 22 was fun. 2022 was fun when they went there.
Was that towards
That
the
was
end of the
Albert.
season? Was that towards the end of the season?
I think it was earlier in the season. Was it 22 or 21? It was one of those two. I think it was 22, actually. Yeah, because Ollie was the manager, and that was the Zach Thompson. They, pieced the bullpen together that weekend. It was just a fun series of managing.
Now, though, it feels maybe...
It was different, though. The Cubs weren't as good as they are right
And
now.
that's what I mean. You've got two teams that are some of the better ones in the NL Central, and both are trying to fight for the playoff spots. And that's where I guess the excitement comes into play for this one. Look, they got the jobs done. To me, it was ugly, but you won the games that you were supposed to win. You put yourself in a prime position to now showcase what you're really made of. This series is where boys become men. Are you going to go out there against the Chicago Cubs where you're 4.5 games back, and do you put yourself 2.5 games back by winning 3 of 4? Because if you do that, then to me, I'm looking at this team a lot differently other than if you go into this and you lose 3 of 4. Because if you lose 3 of 4 against the Cubs, then you're looking at this differently, saying, okay, sure, the Padres fell out, but you got whooped by the Milwaukee Brewers. You couldn't beat the Chicago Cubs. I think you're just one of those average teams.
You're also 6.5 games back at that point with about a month remaining prior to the deadline.
And then it feels like the front office is going to look at this with a little bit more of an understanding hey, this might not be the year for our team despite still being in it. But the difference is you go 3 of 4 against the Chicago Cubs, everybody's outlook changes. Cool, you just beat up on the Chicago Cubs. Your offense is starting to roll. You had 3 really young pitchers go into this matchup, and you won. This is the series that, to me, defines what's going to happen the rest of the season in terms of trade markets / how the team is viewed from the front office and the management staff. But this is the excitement part. This is what you put yourself in a position to do, to go out there and make it a competitive style baseball game in a series against a rival in your own division.
It should be a hell of a lot of fun. It's not just this one. They also have another 3-game series coming up in about 10 days or so. Starting the 4th of July weekend, we'll see the Cardinals versus the Cubs again. So you've got 7 games against the Cardinals in the next 13 days. T-Bone joining us now in studio. He was just in with the Doug Armstrong interview. Again, he's going to join us. Doug Armstrong will in a little more than 5 minutes. T-Bone, how are you feeling going into this one? I was talking with Alex about this. Went way too long on it. But the Cardinals at this point in the season are 42-36. In 2011, at this point in the season, they were 41-37.
Great callback.
At this point in the season in 2006, they were 43-35. So the Cardinals are where they needed to be. They're in striking distance with the Chicago Cubs in the division. How are you feeling going into this thing?
I feel pretty good them going up against the Chicago Cubs because the offense is rolling again. And I think that's the single thing that drives them to the spot that they're in today. What happened when they went through that rut where it was like, well, that was a weird 2 weeks? The offense quit hitting. We know that the pitching is going to go through some highs and lows, and right now it's been pitching fine over the last couple starts. Because they've got their bats clicking, and now that they can kind of fit a couple more of them in there since the Herrera injury, I feel pretty good. I think at minimum they can earn themselves a split against the Chicago Cubs.
I feel good going into this one. I do have some worries, though, and we'll get into those as we go along throughout the day today. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys would like to get involved in the show, the place to do so, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. YouTube chat is available for you at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Got this, the praise coming in from all directions from the 618, the laziest open ever by BK, saying that the record is similar to the title teams where it was all luck and momentum. Oof.
Yeah, that was pretty lazy of you. Way to be lazy early on a Monday where you had Friday off. Do you always choose to be lazy?
No, just when my...
you know what? Shape up before Doug Armstrong steps in here.
I'll do my best. I can't promise you anything. I thought it was interesting that the Cardinals are in the same position today that they have been in previous seasons where they did indeed end up making the postseason, and yet it doesn't necessarily feel that way. But I was wrong, and so I apologize. I got to be better. I'll try to bring my A game with Doug Armstrong, who is expected to join us in studio coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
We want to hear from you. Use the Scott Lee Mic Drop feature on the 101 mobile app. Give us your opinion on anything St. Louis sports with a mic drop.
Brought to you by the Scott Lee Heating Company.
BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Brandon Kiley. We do have Bradford Bruns back in the studio for us today, and we have Doug Armstrong in studio with us, Blues President of Hockey Operations, joining us here today. Spoke with the media just a little bit ago. Now kind enough to join us on BK and Ferrario. Doug, how's the summer been so far?
It's been good. It's been good. Went over to Europe to the World Championships, and then we went to Buffalo for the Combine, and then did our amateur meetings at the Toronto airport. So it's been busy. We've got the draft coming up here, then free agency, and then summer actually starts.
We talk about the amount of weather changes you just experienced from Europe to Buffalo to Toronto back to St. Louis when it was 110 degrees outside. Yeah, welcome back to that.
That was hot. It is hot.
All right, Doug, so you guys have a lot going on right now. You mentioned the draft combine. I want to start there because that's the first thing that'll be coming up for you guys. When you talk with other teams, or you talk among your own group here, how has, if at all, the value of a first-round pick changed from where it is today to where it was when you first started doing this 20-some-odd years ago?
I think the salary cap obviously has made the picks, the value dependent on your organization. It used to be that the value was the same for everybody. Now there's teams that can participate in free agency to a higher degree than other teams that have less value in the picks. They use it differently. We the way our market is and the way we believe that we can be successful is to have value in draft picks. So we have moved them in the past, but we try and regain them at a different time. But yeah, there is value in picks. The other thing too is when I started, now I'm going to age myself, there was 21 teams, now there's 32, potentially 34. So we don't look at them as first rounds anymore. We look at them in blocks. So, pick 1 to 10, then 11 to probably 23, then 23 to 32. So we divide the rounds up, the first round up into 3 maybe different blocks. And then you get to a certain pick, whether some organizations it might be 95, could be 105. Then they're all the same after that. Sure. Just the percentages look like there's not a massive difference between a 4th round pick or 7th round pick. The likelihood it's going to play.
I think in the rumor mill, everybody starts talking about, this first round pick could be available. You just don't see a lot of first round picks get traded in the upcoming draft. You talked a little bit ago, Doug, just about, it's always available. How do you balance as a front office the value of that first-round pick for the pipeline of your team versus the value of what's out there that could help your team right away?
I think it's where you're at in your maturation of your team. I think if you're a cup contending team, when Vegas tells you who those teams are, if you're in the top 5 of that, you're more likely to trade your first-round pick for immediate help. Where we're at in our maturation, we're not likely to move that pick for a 1 or 2 year player, that could walk away. Now that all can change if the right player becomes available and you think you can sign them. But we're in the spot now where we value the picks. We want to gain a group of players that can grow together, win together, skin their knee together. And then try and implement that where it's an ongoing thing. And we were able to do that pretty well for the better part of 12 or 13 years, and we're very close to being able to do that again, we hope.
It's interesting because you were talking earlier about kind of where you guys are at right now, right? This is not like you don't view yourself the way that Colorado probably views itself. Same thing for Edmonton, right? But you do have the potential to win in the upcoming year. You showed that with the Cam Fowler trade, for example. Like you wanted to add to the core. So as you think about where you're at as an organization right now and the goals for 2025, how do you view that influencing some of the decisions that you could make on July 1st or later on this summer to improve the team in 25?
Well, I think when we discussed this last year, we were hoping to be competitive. Then when we got to training camp, I thought we were going to be competitive. Now, I had more faith, I think, in more understanding of who Broberg and Holloway were and how they were going to impact our team. Now, do I think Holloway would do what he did to that level? No. But I thought he was going to make us better. So I would view I entered this season the way I entered last season, with belief that we should be competing for a playoff spot and higher than we competed last year. Like we had to go on a massive run to get to 96 points. But everyone's going to go through ebbs and flows in the season. If we could improve on 96, that'll get us back in the playoffs. And then I do believe that once you make the tournament, the cream usually rises to the top at the end. But you can make life hell for a few teams that expect them to go a long way. And I really feel, and I don't know if I'll ever get over that. Like I really, feel disappointed that we didn't make Winnipeg feel that pain. I go back to my time in Dallas. We won the President's Trophy one year when I was assistant manager, and then Edmonton knocked us off. Like it's an awful feeling, and I wish I could have shared that with Winnipeg.
I like that vengeance mindset right there. When you see the teams around you in the Western Conference, and you've been doing this long enough, Doug, to where you don't get overly aggressive when other teams are making improvements, but talking about trying to improve off of 96 points, do you have to try and work through that yourself to where you avoid trying to get overly aggressive to make this year's team better so that you don't jeopardize 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road from now?
Yeah, I think you want to have a plan. You have short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans, and I think we're trying to be honest with everyone that we believe in what we're trying to do, building around that group of players 25 and under, and we would like to continue to do that. But there are expectations of success. The players above that age group, you have Buchnevich and Kyrou and Shen and Falk and Parenko and Bennington, and they believe, and I believe with them, that we can win. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to serve two masters now, and we think we can do that because we have enough good young players to supplement the leadership and the path that our veterans are showing us.
We're talking to Doug Armstrong, Blues president of hockey operations, joining us here on BK and Ferrario. Doug, in the interview that we just had with you, you mentioned on July 1st, to even be in the conversation with some of these players, it is now like 20% above what you're expecting asking price-wise, and probably another year compared to what people would otherwise expect. Are you anticipating the St. Louis Blues will be active in that market on July 1st this year?
I think we'll be active in finding out what hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully they want to go for 20% less on a one-year deal, and then we'll be very active. But our job is to talk to agents, find out. It starts with, is your player interested in the St. Louis Blues? What do you need to know about the St. Louis Blues? Then it's my job with Alex Dean and our staff to sell them on our future. Okay, if you're coming in now and you're signing for 4 or 5 years, this is, the team you're working with tomorrow, but who are you going to work with next year and the year after? So we have to sell that vision, and they have to buy that they want to be part of it. And there's no sense getting into numbers if that part's not taken care of. And so that's our first part on July 1st is trying to sell our vision of what we have and where we're going, and do you want to be part of that? And then if you get that done, then you get into the level of pain you're willing to accept as far as money and term. And I don't begrudge a player getting the money, and I love giving it to him. Like if it's the right player and he wants to come here and we have to pay more than we think we should pay or more than the public thinks we should pay, we'll do it. I mean, it just has to work out for them and for us.
Doug, it's kind of uncharted territory for the last 5 years because we've been in that COVID stage where it's been a flat cap and you just don't see teams get overly aggressive. I kind of expect July 1st to maybe have some fireworks attached to it. Does that inflate the trade market a little bit more when there are a lot of teams that look at free agency and say, here's how we upgrade, and maybe that benefits teams that aren't willing to go to those high-end waters and go to the trade market instead?
Yeah, it does, except I look at around the league right now, and I'll take the Western Conference. I'm most familiar with that. There's not many teams that aren't trying to win right now. Like there was teams over the last 3 or 4 years that were still in that building process that they've graduated out of that. And so there's not going to be enough players left to make trades. Now, you could reinvent if you wanted to take a step back, you could reinvent your franchise by trading veteran players for young players and just taking your licks for a few years because there's so few players out there that are going to be available. And as I said, I would say 25, maybe even 26 of the teams expect or hope to make the playoffs next year. That's 10 that aren't, that want to be there, and that's, and it's just, what are you willing to invest to make sure you're not one of the 10?
I guess my follow-up to this all would be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, is it fair to say the number one priority, if you're looking to upgrade this roster, the number one place where you could do so would be at the center position heading into this offseason?
That's fair. That's fair. And when you get on the internet, I say to guys, we're just one of 25 teams that are looking for to upgrade.
Yeah, it does feel that way.
Yeah. It does, and it does. It's real, and we talked earlier about, or I talked earlier about how you build your team, and it really has stood the test of time. Down the middle of the ice, centerman, D, goalie. Wingers have great value, but they seem to be easier to replace than a center, a D, or a goalie. So center ice position, it has a lot of value. If I was we saw it last summer too. Like if you're a centerman, above average to way above average, you're going to make a bucket load of money.
So that 20% becomes 25%. Becomes 2 years suddenly for the centers.
And that no move and signing bonus, it all kicks in. And you know what? Like the NHL and the NHLPA have agreed to this system, and there's a group. I'm not in that group that begrudges the players. Hey, good for you. Get whatever you can get. But part of getting whatever you can get is also being happy where you're getting it.
Sure.
And I'm a big believer, don't mess with happy. So if you're in a happy situation and the money's close, stay happy. And that's sort of what we try and create here in St. Louis, is that just make sure you think the grass is actually greener before you go, because it's not too bad here.
Well, and that's where I wanted to go next, because like most people, I find the way that the Florida Panthers have built their roster just fascinating in terms of talking about building that culture to where guys want to be here, maybe stay for less, to where you have that winning mindset. When you look at what the Florida Panthers have accomplished over these last couple of years, do you see other teams around the NHL maybe trying to copycat the Florida Panthers in terms of how they built that roster?
Well, I think it goes to... Yeah, the style of play, I think, stands a test of time when you get to the playoffs. The year they went to the finals and lost, like they were on the cusp of not making the playoffs.
Yeah.
And even in that year, I think Brad Marchand had a breakaway with the score tied. Like, if that goes in, that series is over early, and maybe they're not the Florida Panthers. Mm-hmm. But let's deal in reality. They are the Florida Panthers, and it didn't go in. But I think, having those big physical players can help you that time of year, and it's having the balance. And I think, when you look at a team like Florida, and I do believe this very strongly, that no state tax is only an advantage if you're a well-run team. Some players that are just mercenaries are going to go to a no state tax just to maximize their bottom dollar. But usually what I think those teams can do is say, we're a well-run franchise. You have a chance to win and make more money here. That gets everyone's attention when you can do both. And, and I think I said it earlier to another group that, hockey players' original six teams carry some value, and no state tax carries value from an economic. And if you're a well-run original six team or a well-run team with no state tax, you have an advantage on the rest of the league. People can say I'm crazy. I don't believe I am. But what we need to do is be at the top end of that next group. Mm-hmm. And then living here since 2008, I do understand that when you get here, it's a very difficult place to want to leave. Mm-hmm. And our job is to get guys that might give us a little bit of a discount because they do love St. Louis. And some guys do it. We've had a lot of guys do it, and some guys don't do it. And I respect them too. Like, it's not for everybody, or your career is so finite, and it's finite. And if you want to maximize your dollar value, you might have to go other places. And we accept that, and we hope that, sometimes it works in our favor, sometimes it doesn't. And I don't think we try not to take it personal. It's just, let's just deal with the cards that we have.
Doug, only a couple of questions left here, and we appreciate Doug Armstrong joining us here on BK and Ferrario. I mentioned the center position and what that means for you this offseason. How do you balance that with what you're trying to do to improve your roster for this season, right? What he are as a team.
Yeah, to think that he has the foundation to come in and be a number 2 center in the NHL next year, I think that would be a lot of hope, not a lot of reality. Now, hope springs eternal. Like if he comes in and has a great training camp and he can play second line center between a Kyrou and a Buchnevich or a Holloway or a Snuggerud or whatever, good for us. But I'm a big believer in teams fail players as much as players fail teams. So if we put him in a position to fail and he fails, that's not shame on him, that's shame on us. So we're going to continue to build his foundation, whether it's in St. Louis or it's in Springfield. So when he gets here, he can have staying power. And I just look at the impact that Robert Thomas had the year we won the Cup is way different than the impact Robert Thomas has now. You know, he was a support player on a great team. Now he's the leader of whatever we are. And that takes time, and you have to just let them mature. And so we're not going to ask a Dvorsky to come in here and be a second-line center against McKinnon and McDavid and then be disappointed, geez, he didn't beat them. You know, now Robert Thomas, like, whether he's as good as those guys or not, he doesn't have a choice. He has to play against those guys, and we're excited that he gets that opportunity, but we don't want to throw Dvorsky into that mix now and then be disappointed if it can't get it done.
Final one for me, Doug. How strong do you feel like this team's pipeline is in terms of from the AHL down to players playing in juniors or overseas?
Yeah, I guess it's how you define the pipeline. I think we're really strong between, 20 and 25. Now this year we're not, so we're going to be less strength for the next couple of years, because this year we don't have a second and a third.
Yeah.
So our window of that, those players that are 19 to 20 to 25 now is as strong as it's ever been. Probably as strong as what John Davidson and Larry were building when I got here. Now we're hoping that we built that back up, so now we can go on another decade run focused around that group. So I like that. I like the strength that we have in that age group from 20 to 25.
Doug Armstrong is the Blues president of hockey operations. Should be another very interesting summer. It always is when you guys are involved. Appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Good luck with the draft.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yep.
Take care.
Thanks, Doug. That's Doug Armstrong. Appreciate his time as always joining us here on BK and Ferrario. We'll wrap up that conversation, talk a little bit about what we learned from Army earlier today as well. That's all coming up here on BK and Ferrario.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-500-5000.
Hey, it's BK from my friends over at Victory Men's Health. Go ahead and check them out today, and you can unlock your inner champion. That means different things for different people. For some people, that means weight loss goals that you're trying to meet. For others, you want to check those testosterone levels. If you feel like you don't have the same oomph, you're not getting the same energy every day, you don't have the same amount of results from your workouts, that could be low testosterone symptoms that are affecting you. They can check those levels for you, bump you up to that upper level of the healthy range at Victory Men's Health. Also, erectile dysfunction issues, they can help you out with that as well. It's a super easy process. Go to their website today, victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. Over there, you can see their 4 great locations: O'Fallon, Missouri, O'Fallon, Illinois, Sunset Hills, and Town and Country. And you can book that first appointment with whichever of those locations works best for you. Super easy process. Put in your name, email, phone number. Tell them BK with the 101 ESPN sent you, and then tell them what it means for you to unlock your inner champion today. It's all available for you at Victory Men's Health. Like I said, check them out on their website at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. We just had a 15-minute conversation with the Blues president of hockey operations, Doug Armstrong. Appreciate him stopping by with us today. Alex, we were also able to sit in for about 30 minutes when he talked with the rest of the assembled media. I do want to say this on the front end. We did not ask a question about Joel Hofer in our interview here, because I just didn't think it was worth our time. He answered all of those questions in the other session. I will pass along what he had to say, though, to you guys right now. So we said with Joel Hofer, basically, listen, if somebody's going to offer sheet him, cool. We'll go ahead and match, basically, any offer sheet that's sent our way. He did add a little bit of a caveat. The only way that we don't do that is if the money goes like well beyond what we're willing to spend, and that would have to start with the first-round pick. In other words, if it gets up to $4.7 million or above with Hofer, then maybe they have conversations about it. But anything up until that, the Blues are willing to match, and they've got the cap space to be able to do so. So I don't think those Hofer fantasy dreams that Oilers fans, for example, are having right now, I don't think that's realistic. So that's why we didn't spend a lot of time talking about Hofer with Doug Armstrong here on the show. I also want to mention Trevor Zegras just traded to the Philadelphia Flyers for basically a poo-poo platter of a couple of picks and a player.
Joel Quenneville said, get him off my team.
Yeah, we had a lot of texts coming in. Ask Doug about Zegras. Yeah, he's not a player that I think this team's going to be interested in.
No, not at all. And to your Hofer point, the way that I read this with Doug was this was just him basically saying, if you're going to offer sheet him, go for it. You're not going to get him.
Correct.
Unless somebody's going out there and offering $6+ million, which I think that would be crazy if an Edmonton Oilers team does that.
And also, you get a first and a third-round pick for it.
And
cool.
Absolutely, and that's where he said you measure what the worth is of what we're getting back in return. The other ones, too, that I know a lot of people were probably curious / frustrated we didn't ask about, Holloway and Broberg. And basically the way he said is there's no appetite for approaching these guys now. If they want to approach us, great. They're going to be here long-term for us. So RFA stuff, they're not worried about. UFA stuff, it doesn't sound like Ryan Suter's got a spot on this team. And Radek Faksa, Doug said that, look, they've talked about it, and it's just a matter of where Faksa wants to go.
So let's now give our biggest takeaways from our conversations, both in the other room for 30 minutes with Army and then what we just had for 15 minutes. So we've heard him speak for 45 minutes today. Alex, I have no idea where this team stands on free agency.
All right, coming up next.
Genuinely, I have no idea. I don't think they're going to be players for, like, Sam Bennett. I don't think that seems very realistic. We had talked before the show today, just full disclosure, about John Tavares. I don't get the sense that they're going to be in conversations with him either. But that middle-tier free agent, like Pius Suter, I don't know. I genuinely don't know if that's going to be something they're interested in or not. I think they would prefer to go the trade route, but in hearing Doug Armstrong talk, I don't know what's out there on the trade market right now, other than guys that, like, yeah, we'll listen, but you better blow us away. And I don't know if the Blues are going to be interested in that either. So where do you think things stand right now for the Blues after hearing Army for 45 minutes today?
I don't believe they're players in free agency on day 1, 2, or 3. Like, I think those first few days don't count on the Blues being a part of free agency signing, because the way that he talked about, he's like, look, we're not going to be bargain shopping, but we're also not going to be looking at offering these guys that may only be here for a couple of years. And the other part that we asked him about with the first-round pick was we're not trading for guys, that first-round pick, or guys that could be here for a year and then walk, or 2 years and walk.
He said if we're trading it for a guy that has a year of term left, basically just understand we're re-signing that guy.
Yeah.
He made it very clear if that guy doesn't have term left, he will have term whenever we get him here in the office.
Yeah, like the way that I read the whole availability with Doug is that if they're going to improve that center position, it's either going to be for a guy that is 15 days into free agency and he's willing to sign for less than what the market is going to give him, or they're going via trade. But what threw me for a loop is, cool, he talked about wanting to be closer to 6th best in the Western Conference than 10th best in the Western Conference, but you just heard Doug tell us there's about 10 to 12 teams in the Western Conference that are all trying to do the exact same thing. So I don't know what the appetite is for what's available. The part that throws a wrench into all of this is, where do guys that are free agents sign? Because that's when other teams have to shed money, and does Doug look at that as the opportunity to capitalize on it? The part that, or the line that really got me was when he was talking about if we're bringing in guys, it's not because of money, it's because of spots. So basically,
if we're shipping
guys out, yes. So if they're moving on from defensemen, it's because we're bringing somebody in that can fill the spot that we have. It's not because we're getting rid of money.
Basically, that's a shot across the bow for Matthew Joseph and Alexander Texier.
And Nick Leddy. People that are saying Nick Leddy needs to be moved.
But only if they sign a defenseman.
And if they find, or if they acquire one in the trade. So they're not moving guys out to shed salary. I think he said we've got like $15 million in salary right now with a Torrey Krug, because he said Torrey Krug's not playing. This is like the most gray area I've ever felt going into an offseason with Doug, because in the past you know where his upgrades are. It's, okay, well, what's going to be out there? Now,
we know where the upgrade's coming. It's a center. If they're going to make a significant move this offseason, it's going to be a center.
But you don't know where it's coming from. Because there's nobody on the market that matches what he's talking about, and nobody via trade that makes sense right now.
That's where I don't know. I'm just stuck wondering, really more than anything else, is what is this going to look like player? Who is that player that fits the criteria that he has described, that makes sense for the St. Louis Blues? And I don't know. I don't know if that player currently is out there. Or maybe he is just like telling us one thing and he will do another, right? That's entirely possible. He's got a hand to play. He doesn't have to show us his cards. He can tell us, I got a 2-7 off suit. And then suddenly you got pocket aces. What are you talking about? And they sign like John Tavares. That's entirely possible. Yeah. And that's why I asked the question about that I started out by talking about Cam Fowler. Because Fowler in no way fits what we're talking about here. He doesn't. You had to give up an asset for him. He's 33 years old. He had 1 year left on his contract, and they went out and acquired him. Why? Because they thought the team was good, and he was available. And so they said, well, we're not breaking the bank for this guy. We think he's a pretty good player. $4.5 million on a year-and-a-half deal. He's 32. Yeah, let's go do it. Mm-hmm. Could they find that guy this offseason? Is that guy out there, and they're not sure that he's interested in the Blues today, but by July 1st, suddenly now we have more information, and that guy's interested, and let's go get it done. I don't know who that player is. I can't give you a name on it, but maybe somebody is out there that fits into that criteria that could be for their forwards what Cam Fowler was for their defenseman a year ago. That's
the part that I think I've just tinfoiled it to myself. I still don't believe they're going to be drafting at 19th overall. The way that he framed that was when, I think it was Jeremy Rutherford that asked, do you consider that 19th overall pick available? And he said, absolutely, we consider it available. But, what I mentioned, we're not getting somebody who's got a year left or 2 years left unless he's willing to re-sign.
Correct.
I don't believe they're drafting 19th overall. It's kind of why I asked the pipeline. They're good in the 20 to 25. They need those younger ones, the ones that you get in this draft. But he talked about the tiers of drafting, and they're in that tier of you're going to get a good player, maybe, who doesn't impact your team for 4 years. Now, they also don't have a second and a third round pick, which is why I don't know, but I just got the gut feel that 19th overall pick is going to be in play, because that's how you can upgrade the center position if you find the right guy that matches their criteria.
We've said this all along. The ideal scenario for the Blues is that they can find somebody that is in that 25 to 28-year-old age range that has a couple of years at a minimum left on their deal, and you can send some kind of young assets that are not currently affecting your NHL club out the door to acquire that player. That is the ideal world. Finding that player is easier said than done.
Right.
Because it's one thing for me to say, yeah, go get that guy. He's 25 to 28, scores 20 goals for you, plays good defense. He's probably 6'3"-ish, add some size up the middle. Like, all of these things, they're great. Unfortunately, that guy is 28. He makes $8.5 million a year on an 8-year contract, and now you're out of the bidding war, right? Like, that guy is Sam Bennett. And the problem is everybody wants that guy. As Doug Armstrong said, 25 different teams would like to acquire a middle six center this offseason.
Right.
So easier said than done. I feel like we talked to Doug Armstrong for 45 minutes, and I know less about their offseason today than I did 45 minutes ago.
That guy is a genius.
Yeah, he's very good
from that reason. Like last year, he brought up the offer sheet, and I remember T-Bone coming in and telling us that, and I was like, yeah, okay, offer sheet. Sure, Doug, you've never done that one before. That's like when he's talked about not buying out people. That's fine. You say that there's no appetite for that, but what happens?
Yeah, I don't think he's buying anybody out this offseason. That is
I didn't think he was offer sheeting anybody last offseason.
Yeah, but he didn't rule it out. He said we're open to offer sheets. We just don't like offer sheets that don't work. He basically ruled out a buyout today.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between the two sides. I also think, like, they don't view it as necessary because, dude, Matthew Joseph on his salary, somebody will take that now. They probably wouldn't have a year ago. It was a flat cap. Cap's going up. Now contracts like Alexander Texier, like Matthew Joseph, are actually more valuable because of how cheap they are relative to what the cap is today. And they're rosterable players at a minimum. If you're a team that needs a 13th forward, dude, those guys are fine.
I think the other thing that we didn't mention, which maybe we can get to more into, was his answer about the defense, because I know people have brought up changing the defense and finding an upgrade, and he basically said we're always looking to improve, but if we come back with the four that ended the year of Parayko, Fowler, Broberg, and Falk, that's fine. Would we like to improve? Yes, but it's got to be an obvious improvement. And
I don't know if that guy
good luck finding that.
Ekblad.
Yeah, good luck finding that's where you're shipping guys out. So you're probably looking at the same defense, and then Kessel and Tucker, they said they want to get looks at. So now we're talking 7 defensemen with
your
Leddy.
defense core is set.
Yeah.
Unless
you're making some type of obvious.
Same thing as it was a year ago without Suter.
Yeah.
Is basically what they're looking at going into this season.
I'm going to miss Suter.
And I think that's fine. I'm totally cool with their defensive core. My questions have been on the forward side of things, and I don't know what the answers are. He's Alex, this is T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, questions and answers here on BK and Ferrario.
Text us anytime at 314-399-9646 on the Air Comfort Service Heating, Cooling, and Insulation text line on 101 ESPN.
I was doing a lot of yard work over the weekend, and you're spending a lot of time outside, and, of course, neighbors swing by, and I had 2 of my neighbors up the street come by and say that they loved the way that the exterior of our house looked, and I explained to them that, no, I did not paint this myself. I'm not that talented. We used Rhino Shield. They said that the paint, the ceramic coating that was on there, it just popped, and that's how I explained it to them. I said, you're not just getting the curb appeal of Rhino Shield, but you're getting the work that goes behind it. They were impressed once I told them that, look, it's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. Essentially what you're getting is you're getting the coating of a Rhino. You're getting permanent on the exterior of your home. And it's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty with Rhino Shield's work. Whatever type of exterior you have on your home or your business, Rhino Shield's work will stick to it. Again, it is a ceramic coating, not paint. It's engineered to outlast paint. So if your house is looking for that update, if you're looking for that curb appeal that pops, then it's time to call Darren and his team over at Rhino Shield. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you. He'll come out. He'll walk you through the whole process. His team does incredible work and very fast with their work. Schedule your opportunity to work with Rhino Shield today. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedorko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers on 101 ESPN.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Me and T-Bone are going to do a podcast real quick, Alex, on politics. You can go ahead and sit on the side. We'll get to Katie Wu coming up here in about 10 minutes or so. From the 618... Guys, do you think Tage Thompson, from the 573, do you guys think Tage Thompson could be an option for the Blues? There's rumors that he's not exactly happy in Buffalo.
That's fine, but if you're Buffalo, you're not trading Tage Thompson. Like, again, this all comes back to Rasmus Dahlin having conversations with their ownership, and their ownership saying, we are going to try and improve this team. They're not trading Tage Thompson. It doesn't sound like they're trading Alex Tuck either. It sounds like the only guy that's potentially on the move is Bo Byram and J.J. Paterka. And I don't want either of those guys. So
I don't know what they're doing.
They don't know what they're doing,
I don't
Brandon.
know if they know what they're doing.
They don't know what they're doing.
I also don't think, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't watched a lot of Buffalo Sabres hockey.
What?
I know, it is shocking. But
It's
I don't
like
think
the
Tage
Buffalo
Thompson...
Bills of the NHL.
No. I don't think Tage Thompson's a 200-foot player.
No.
I think he really enjoys the offensive side of the ice. I don't think he likes the whole defense thing, so I don't think he fits the criteria of what Army's looking for.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the bad boy from Troy.
Oh.
How concerned are you guys with the Cardinals' lack of power? We just had two guys finally break into the 10-home run club. Meanwhile, the Cubs have two guys with over 20 home runs so far this year, as do other clubs. Is it just because they play at Busch or what? I don't think it's just because they play at Busch Stadium. I think it's because they don't have a lot of true power hitters on their roster. And one of the very few guys that they do have is Nolan Gorman. He hasn't played a ton this year, and then when he was playing earlier this year, he wasn't particularly good. Cardinals are 24th in Major League Baseball right now in home runs. 74 home runs on the season. How concerned am I about it? I guess it depends what you're asking me. Am I concerned that that's going to be the thing that prevents them from getting into the playoffs? It could. I'm not overly concerned about it, though, because you can make up for that in other areas. For example, Milwaukee has hit 3 fewer home runs than you have on the season, but their pitching is so good that it makes up for it. Where it does concern me is the playoffs. Like I think it's really hard to be a legitimate World Series contender without having the ability to put the ball in the seats. So I am concerned there. But in the regular season, you can make up for this with other areas of your roster.
Yeah, if you're talking about a World Series contender, then yeah, we're concerned about it. But for right now, they're competitive, and they've remained competitive from the start of the season. And all year, they've had the inability to hit home runs. So I'm not all of a sudden going to start panicking about it.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about it like you guys when you get to October, because when you get to October, what do you see on a night-in, night-out basis? All the best pitchers in baseball. And you know what you're not going to do against those guys? Get 3 singles and score a run. Like the fact that they were able to do that once against Andrew Abbott, who's going to be an all-star and potentially NL Cy Young Award winner. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that often. And as you saw yesterday, he was able to shut them out for 6 innings.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from 618. Guys, is Walker going to go down as the biggest bust in recent memory? Are we talking about for Major League Baseball? If we are, then no, definitely not. For the Cardinals? Man, I really hope not. But
I think it's either he or Carlson.
It's not looking good right now, man.
I'd say Walker would go down as the biggest bust, probably in most tenure. Because
Over
I mean,
Carlson?
Yeah,
how much
I
they
think
thought Carlson was going to be.
For as much as Mo liked Carlson, like I think the hope was that he was going to be a really good player. Like I remember all the comps for like Andre Ethier. Jordan Walker was a superstar potentially in the making.
I've got another aspect to this that is different between he and Carlson, and I think between Walker and honestly most of the other prospects that have failed here, there were injuries that could explain the issues with Carlson. There were injuries that could explain the issues with Alex Reyes, for example, who was like one of the top prospects in all of Major League Baseball. That guy was just different, and then injuries took their hold, and he wasn't the same pitcher afterwards. That hasn't happened with Walker. It just hasn't worked for him at this level. So could he be that? He could be. That's the path that he's currently on. And I think they're really trying to they're hoping that can change. But, man, he's got to start showing some production. And in the meantime, I don't know how much he's going to play for the foreseeable future. I think that we had the question last week of how do you make this playing time work between him and Burleson and Gorman and Donovan and Nootbaar and Herrera. It was 6 players for 4 spots. Well, Herrera is now on the injured list, and Jordan Walker is clearly the worst producer of those guys. So it almost now is those other 4 names and Sajasi that become parts of this mix. So it's a bummer. I'm really rooting for Jordan Walker to get this thing back on track, but it doesn't feel right now as though that's likely. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we talked a little bit about the home run power, the lack of home run power for the Cardinals. I do want to talk about their offense overall in the event that Herrera is out for potentially up to the next 6 weeks. We'll talk about that coming up in 15 minutes, whether or not the Cardinals have enough to overcome his injury offensively. But next, we'll talk to Katie Wu. She's the Cardinals insider for The Athletic, and she joins us here in BK and Ferrario.
101 ESPN has your chance to meet Adam Wainwright at this year's Big League Bash at the Factory July 27th. Our winner will receive 2 tickets to the Big League Bash, featuring Adam Wainwright in concert, along with appearances from Cardinals players and Fred Bird, a silent auction, and more. All to support Big League Impact. Plus, our winner and guest will receive 2 passes to meet Waino prior to the show. Tickets to the Big League Bash, supported by Community America Credit Union, are on sale now. Find all the details and that chance to win free Big League Bash tickets and meet and greet passes to meet Adam Wainwright right now at 101ESPN.com and on your 101 mobile app.
Over the weekend, boy, it was a hot one, and that is why if your HVAC system is not ready to go for you throughout the rest of this summer, then it is time to call Classic Air Care. Whether you need a new HVAC system or you've got an old one, and that old one just needs to be maintained for a few more years, Classic Air Care is the company to use. I preach to so many of my friends and family members to check out their maintenance agreement, and the maintenance agreement comes in handy at this time of the year. Twice a year, they come out spring, fall, to check the unit, clean the unit, fine-tune the unit. Now, maybe you're past that window, but when you're a part of that maintenance agreement, when issues pop up, like for some reason it's not cooling down the house or maybe the fan stopped working, you call Classic Air Care. You get priority scheduling with them because of that maintenance agreement. And that priority scheduling is massive to get them out in within 24 hours of your unit going down. So make sure you can battle this heat with the right company, and that is Classic Air Care. They've got knowledgeable technicians. They've got quick customer service that can help you over the phone. You can also schedule online. They've got financing options for you if you're purchasing an HVAC system. All of it done online at ClassicAirCare.com. Again, check them out. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Get social with 101 ESPN. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube at 101 ESPN.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. Live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline. Also on YouTube with Katie Wu. She's the Cardinals insider for The Athletic. You can follow her always on Twitter as well, at Katie J. Wu. Katie, appreciate the time as always. How you doing today?
Guys, I'm well. The heat wave here in St. Louis has reached the point where you have to keep your blinds closed at all times in the house. So that's great. Definitely should be better than whatever the weekend was with these night games, but still not at all a comfy time to be outside.
I was going to say, that's great, but by the time you get up to the press box after the on-field availability, Katie, I have to imagine you need a new change of clothes.
It's not great. And also the AC in that press box is questionable at best, I will say.
There's no AC. They tell you that there's AC, but there's no AC.
Yeah.
It's rough. All right, Katie, these are all first world problems. The Cardinals are back in action, and we actually get to see the Cubs. First time that we have seen them all season long, and I want to, before we start previewing this series, look back at the week that was since the last time that we talked with you. It wasn't always pretty. But the Cardinals have won 5 of their last 6 games. We mentioned this at the beginning of the show today. They basically did what they had to do to make this series somewhat interesting. What did you make of the week that was in Cardinals land?
That's exactly how I would have put it, and transparency purposes. I was only with the team for the Friday game this week. I should have a much more regular schedule starting today, but was able to watch the games from afar. And like you said, BK, exactly what they needed to do. They go 5-1 against Chicago and the Reds in an unorthodox way, a doubleheader, a couple of extra inning games, but a win is a win nonetheless. And they sit 4.5 games out from Chicago. The Brewers are right in the middle there at 3.5 games out. A big chance to do some damage in the National League standings. And when you're looking at what the Cardinals needed to do over the last week, that Brewer series was not good. And that team could have been frustrated. They could have hung their head. They could have just said, like, okay, wow, this has not been a good 2 weeks. We knew June was going to be really tough on us from a schedule perspective. But what they did is they took the off day that everyone needed, and they came up against the White Sox, and they were essentially the same team that we saw in May, which was a good thing. And for them to carry that energy and grind through it, just some really gritty, resilient baseball over the last week. I think we're all feeling much better about the Cardinals now that they went 5-1, and it makes for a really exciting series against the Cubs. I can't believe it's been 89 days before these two teams played each other.
Yeah, it's wild that we wait till the end of June to see the Cubs, but talk about perfect timing with two teams as close as they are. Katie, true or false, this series could dictate the way that the front office approaches this team at the deadline?
Oh, good question. Can I go slightly true? Because let's say, okay, worst case scenario, the Cubs sweep the series 4 games. All of a sudden, the Cardinals are 8.5 games out of the division. I think it's very fair for the front office to say, is this team competitive in the NL Central, or is it just competitive in the wild card? And that would dictate and maybe weigh a little differently in the trade deadline decisions, which I know we'll spend the next month talking about at length. But if the Cardinals can, at minimum, split or even win the series, then maybe you're having a much more serious conversation if you're John Mozeliak about what should we do in July. I don't think the team should necessarily settle for a split, but I think given all things considered, if these two teams go 2-2 against each other, that's totally fine. You can work from there. What I would fear if you're the Cardinals is losing 3 out of the 4 games or 4 out of the 4 games, and then all of a sudden the division looks a lot more aggressive and a lot more difficult to catch up in the second half. Now, of course, we've seen plenty of teams go on crazy second half runs, this Cardinals team included. But I think when you are the front office and your ownership, who is, I think this year has the biggest decision to make in terms of what you want to spend, as you continue to weigh runway versus results, you're taking a look at where you are in the standings from a division standpoint and also wildcard standpoint and making your best guess. Guys, I'm all in on the Cardinals being competitive this year. It's made for some really fun baseball, but I do not believe they should deviate from their path of player runway and preparing for the future. They've shown there's a way that they can do both at the same time. I would hope, no matter where the team is in the standings, that continues and the emphasis continues to be on the young players. We will see, though.
Katie Woo joining us here on BK and Ferrario. You can read her work over at The Athletic and follow her on Twitter as well at Katie J. Woo. You can always see her as well on Cardinals Territory. She does that podcast regularly, so check that out on YouTube as well. Katie, when you look at the way that the Cardinals offense is now going to be constructed without Ivan Herrera for at least the next 2 weeks, maybe the next 6 weeks, that is quite the timeline that they gave us on him. How do you view it? Like, do they have enough to be able to make up for his lack of presence in that lineup, in your opinion?
Yeah, what a window. Just based on, I'm no doctor, obviously, you guys, but just based on the severity of a grade 2 hamstring and the Cardinals, who usually are much more optimistic when these injuries first come out and how they predict it, I would think it'd be much more closer to 4 weeks at the minimum for Herrera, but we will see. In the meantime, it's a big opportunity for guys like Nolan Gorman and Alec Burleson to step up. We'll focus on Burleson first because he has been on a tear, not just for the last couple of weeks, but for the last couple of months. And we've talked about this all season long. Ollie Marmol's had some really difficult decisions to make in terms of what his starting 9 looks like, because no matter who is in it, you can make the case that somebody else should be instead. And it's just never going to be perfect. So when I say Alec Burleson should be playing every day, I say that under the caveat that at least once a week, if not 2, he's going to have to sit so someone else like a Jordan Walker or Nolan Gorman can get in. However, with Herrera out, that does open a little bit more of a window. And I think right now, Alec Burleson has the hottest bat. He's shown for the first time in his major league career that he can hit lefties and he can hit them consistently. Why not ride that hot bat until something else flips? That doesn't mean that you deviate away from Nolan Gorman or Jordan Walker or Lars Nootbaar, who is taking much better at bats lately. But if the Cardinals were willing to give Herrera the preferred treatment because of his offense, so he was there every day, regardless of how complicated it made the starting lineup, other positions, regardless of opposing handedness, because the offense was impactful and because they were rewarded by his bat, why not do the same for Burleson, who right now looks a lot like Herrera did just from the left side of the plate?
We had this conversation last week, Katie, a lot. Has Burleson put himself into the core member of this young team moving forward, meaning an everyday player for the roster?
I think he's well on his way. I mean, I don't know what else he has to prove to the Cardinals except for I can continue to hit left-handed pitching. And in years prior, you saw some hesitancy to not play him against lefties. And at that point, the major league stats backed up that decision. Right now, and this is something Ollie Marmol said in the one day that I showed up to work last week, that Burleson has been able to to show that he can hit lefties. And it's becoming a thing where they can play him every day, regardless of opposing handedness. Now, we know who the two priorities were coming into the season for the runway year. It was Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman. But just because those two were identified as a top priority doesn't mean that the runway label doesn't apply to others. I mean, it still applies to Newbar. It still applies to an extent to Donovan, but I think we all know who he is and who he's going to be in the future. And it applies to guys like Herrera and Burleson. As the Cardinals continue to weigh runway versus results, the biggest thing I'm interested in seeing is you can still prioritize runway, but what if you're prioritizing different players than you first envisioned? That doesn't mean you totally give up on Jordan Walker or you totally give up on, any one of these guys that's slumping. But if you're the Cardinals and you want to be competitive and you have some young guys that are hitting the ball well, seeing the ball well, playing overall good baseball, they may not be the players that you originally identified as your runway group, but Alec Burleson still fits under the runway title, does he not?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would argue for sure he does. And I also am very curious to see what this all means for Jordan Walker. He has not performed the way that any of us would have liked this season, Katie, and he knows that, you know that, I know that, the Cardinals know that. They have a huge series, these 4 games against the Cubs, and there have been times that we have seen Ollie manage differently depending on where they're at in their schedule, right? Whether that means like, hey, big spot coming up. Normally this would be a runway opportunity. Today, we're taking that at bat and we're going to give it to the guy that gives us the best chance to get a hit here. How do you anticipate the usage looking for Jordan Walker this week?
I'm really glad that you brought this up, BK, because it's something that I'm interested in as well. And I think you're right. Ollie's done a nice job at picking the spots on when to go for it and when to, utilize the development or the runway. I don't think this series is a runway series. I think this is you play your best 9. I mean, there's a reason Michael McGreevy is most likely going to spot start tomorrow. And you go from there. And I'm not quite ready to have the conversation about Jordan Walker yet. I would like to give him one more week, but I think he's just 2 for 18 since coming back from the injured list and has regressed from an at-bat standpoint to where he was before the injury. And that's disappointing because he did look like he was turning a corner right before that left wrist inflammation. So we will get a taste, I think, or at least a hint at how the Cardinals are viewing Walker right now based on the starting lineups over the next 4 days. The Cubs, like the Cardinals, have not set their lineup through the series. I think just Monday and Tuesday, although Shota will be back either Wednesday or Thursday, so that will have something to do with it. You're going to see the Cardinals match up like they always do against opposing handedness, and maybe you see Burleson in there more regularly. Nolan Gorman has done a nice job of not being overly splitty as well. What that means for Walker, I'm not sure, but it's definitely something to monitor because this goes back to our earlier point. If you're going to play the runway but prioritize the players that are performing well, I don't think Walker is on that list right now.
Speaking of players performing well, this is a therapy session, right?
Can be.
Like, this is where
I didn't know we were going to need it after they won 5 of their last 6.
They won 5 out of 6. What is that?
Can I complain about something, though? Katie's supposed to help me with that.
Yes, of course.
Katie, why is Andre Granillo sent down to Memphis?
Oh, this is something.
Oh, because he has options. Right. It's because he has options. They needed a fresh arm.
This bullpen option has been bad, though, and he's pitched well.
He's pitched really well, and we're going to see him again. But it went down to needing a fresh arm after a doubleheader. The grueling heat also didn't play into it. The Cardinals' bullpen was gassed all weekend. 11 innings on Saturday didn't help as well. They needed a fresh arm. He had just pitched. He has the most options available. So that's just the unfortunate part of the business. Did I love it? No. Do I like Graceffo being up? Yes. But I wish it was at the expense. I shouldn't say at the expense. I wish it was a different decision. But I do understand from a position standpoint and a roster standpoint why it was Granillo. We should see him again soon, though.
I know that there's more that goes into this than what I'm about to say, but you have 3 lefties in your bullpen right now, and I think Granillo's been better for them than John King, but again, I understand there's more that goes into it than just the consideration of this guy better than this guy.
She made me feel better. Now you made me feel worse about it.
I know.
Shut up, man.
It's fine. They did what they had to do. At least O'Brien's still here. He's been good for him. Hey, Katie, we appreciate the time as always. Really looking forward to checking out your work over at The Athletic throughout this series. People can see your preview that you did with the Cubs beat writer as well over at The Athletic right now. Enjoy the series this week. Try to stay cool out there. We'll talk with you again next week.
You got it, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Katie.
Got it. That's Katie Wu joining us as she does each Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate her time as always. All right, Alex, on the other side, I asked Katie this question. I want to ask it to you. Do the Cardinals have enough offense to be able to make up for the lack of Ivan Herrera's bat in their lineup? I want to get to that with you. We'll hear from the listeners as well. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line coming up next here on BK and Ferrario.
The Spread Zone, where sports betting meets reckless optimism, questionable logic, and the occasional stroke of genius. With hosts Anthony Stalter, Tim McKernan, and Scott Rizzuto. Check out the latest from the Spread Zone at 101ESPN.com or the 101 mobile app. The Spread Zone is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedorko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
That's driven a long way toward left. Benintendi on the fly. That ball is gone. Opposite field, 3-run homer for Burleson.
That's what it sounded like over the weekend. Audio courtesy of FanDuel Sports Midwest. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. The Cardinals are not a big slugging team. Alex, in the month of June, they are 24th in slugging percentage. And that's pretty much in line with where they've been for most of the season. Although they have been a higher doubles team for much of the season. It's the homers that are really lacking for them. And now you're going to be without Ivan Herrera for the next 2 to 6 weeks. 2 weeks would basically put you up like right at the All-Star break. So at a minimum, I'm going to go ahead and say like, hey, 3 to 6 weeks is probably a better timeline for the Cardinals because they're not going to have him prior to the All-Star break. That's not going to be an easy thing to replace. Ivan Herrera has been your most productive hitter so far this year. He leads you in basically every statistical category offensively. 320 average, 395 on base, 533 slug. He has 8 home runs this season, and he has played in exactly 42 games. So he's played in nearly half of the baseball games and is 2 off of the team lead for home runs. Pretty good season overall for Ivan Herrera. Can they replace his bat? Can they stay afloat and maybe even gain some ground, which might be necessary, prior to the deadline, which is, check Snokes, 6 weeks away, if he's not playing up until the trade deadline?
You're not going to like my answer, but I don't know. I mean...
It's probably the correct answer.
Hot take radio. Do I believe it can? Yes, because I saw it do it early in the season without Ivan Herrera and when he was one of the best hitters in baseball for you for the last 5-6 games. And I'm thinking, how does this work? Now, how did they survive that early portion of the season? Brennan Donovan playing like an MVP. You had Lars Nootbaar playing like one of the best hitters in baseball for them. And then that was all understanding, too, that Wilson Contreras wasn't hitting well for you. And Mason Wynn was kind of here and there. So they can. It's the part that I've probably been most confident in this season is the offense from top to bottom, because if one piece of that dam breaks, the whole thing doesn't collapse. It still finds ways to push through. Now, when you don't have slug, when you don't have the home run capability, your lineup is exposed a little bit more. When you don't have that guy who can just clear the bases for you, that's problematic because you're relying on those timely hits. But, man, their runners in scoring position, with the exception of like 2 weeks, has been really good this season. I think the fact that Alec Burleson is hitting like one of the best hitters in baseball right now, Mason Wynn's doing that for you, Wilson Contreras is doing that for you. You hope that you can get Nootbaar back to that level, Wynn back to that level. Yeah, I think they can. Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not, but I do think they can survive.
I think they can for about 2 or 3 weeks. And the reason that I kind of limit it to maybe that early portion of, hopefully, fingers crossed, this is 3 weeks he's out, not the full 6 that they gave in that timeline, is because of the bats that they've got going right now. I mean, you mentioned it. Burley's on a tear right now. Nolan Gorman is on a tear right now. He's been hitting the ball very well. Donovan looks good. Nootbaar looks like he might be getting ready to get out of his slump. I think his at-bats have looked better over the last couple of games. So with that being said, I think you can survive for the time being. Those guys aren't going to stay hot, though, for the entirety 6 weeks that Herrera could potentially be out. They're going to cool off, and when they do, that's when there's going to be a problem, because then you don't have that guy to really lean on and say, hey, Ivan Herrera has been the guy that can really drive the train for us no matter what. When he slumps, it's like a 2-game slump. At some point, those guys are going to cool off, and when that does occur, that's when you're really going to see the offense go back to what it was. That month he was out early on in the season, they were 19th in OPS in that stretch. Now, they went 15 and 14. I think that's probably about where they'll end up in this stretch for how long he's out, slightly above 500.
I'm worried.
Of course you are.
Of the guy that's been bringing up all these positive numbers today.
I'm really worried about what this offense is going to look like.
Their record's the same as 2006 and 2011.
Without Herrera in the lineup. He's the guy that I've been able to set as the metronome. Whenever he comes to the plate in a big situation, I believe that something good is about to happen. And when you pull that piece out of the Jenga board, I do have some concerns. I don't think it's going to topple all the way over, but it becomes very uneasy, right? It's an unsettling feeling as you're looking at this lineup every day and you see what the lineup card looks like. A, it's very left-handed heavy. And B, man, yes, Alec Burleson can replace the production that you had from Ivan Herrera. He's been doing that lately. Eventually, that's going to turn. He's not just going to stay on a heater the entire season. And frankly, you needed both of them. If you're going to be a lineup that is constructed the way that the Cardinals are, you need multiple bats that are hot at all times. So Burleson, great. Okay, we've got one. Who's the second one right now that's really hot? Gorman's gone cold. Gorman's been really cold the last week or so. He's batting 091 or something like that over the last week. Like
It's Contreras, isn't it?
He's been cold as well lately.
Oh, he has?
Yeah, he's batting 100 in the last week. So I don't know who that second bat is right now. It could change tonight. It could be Gorman. It could be Wilson Contreras. It could be Nolan Arenado, who's actually playing pretty well lately. He looks like he's got his swing back on track, but I'm not falling for that thing again, dude. This might have been like a really nice two-game stretch, basically. I have no idea. Donnie needs to get going again. He has not been the same guy coming off of that toe injury. It would be really nice if Mason Wynn started to hit again. It's not like the end of the world in general if he doesn't, but with Herrera out, I would like to see a right-handed bat kind of take shape. I'm pretty concerned about where your lineup is going to be, especially as you enter into this stretch where you're going up against decent pitching and you're going up against a few really good teams, especially with the Cubs, 7 of your next 13 games coming head-to-head against them. The timing on this is just brutal for the Cardinals.
Yeah, it is. And, I mean, I didn't realize that Contreras was going through that much of a cold spell within the last week because it just hasn't felt like it. If that's the case, then, I mean, I get the alarm bells, but when you've got a guy hitting like Alec Burleson, I know they can't survive on one bat, but does one bat bring better out of certain players? That's what you find out with this Cubs series.
The thing that I would push back against this with the Burleson stuff is, like, he's been in the lineup. That doesn't change. Nothing, like, if Sajaci was the guy that he took for him this weekend and it was like, oh, my God, they entered this guy into the mix and holy bleep, he was 8 for 16 with 2 homers. Okay, that could change some things with your lineup. You're like, okay, maybe this guy just goes on a hot streak, and for the next 2 weeks, he replaces 1-for-1 of what Von Herrera was. Burleson was already in the lineup every day. Mm-hmm. You're not adding that to the mix. You are just maintaining what that is, and you're pulling out a piece, and you are just staying afloat. Like, think about the last week or two, what the Cardinals have done. You were merely staying afloat with Herrera and Burleson hitting the way that they were. Now I pull one of those pieces out of the lineup. I can't replace his production with somebody that was already there, right? It's like saying, hey, financially, I'm adding some more expenses into my life. I don't add money by just maintaining the same income. I need a new source of income. The Cardinals right now have one source of income, and they need to find a new one, and I don't know who that guy is going to be, but somebody has to step up, and in my mind, it probably needs to be one of your right-handed bats. Like, I'm looking at Wynn, Arenado, Contreras. You guys are in the top 5 of the order every single day right now. One of the 3 of you has to be able to replace at least most of, if not all of, what Herrera had been bringing to the table. Those are the guys to me that are under the pressure to do that over the next 3 to 6 weeks.
And I'm kind of in the camp of you with Arenado. I'm not going to rely on that. That's just going to be a nice thing if you get it. I think I'm looking at Wynn and Contreras. And honestly, it's probably Contreras. Like, Wilson Contreras is your time to shine, right? Like, you've got the contract. You're looked at as a core member of this team. I know Mason Wynn falls into this camp as well, but still younger. This is Wilson Contreras' opportunity to capitalize when you lose a bat like Von Herrera. That's what you want from your leaders.
Yeah, I think the hope is that those two can replace him. And I know you said Contreras has been going through it the last 7 days. Overall, his month has been really good. He's slugging. He's driven in, I think it's 20 runs this month. And though I'm not buying what Arenado is selling, it's coming at the right time, right? Like, that's all you ask for Nolan Arenado is, hey, when we need you to step up and go on a little bit of a heater, can you? And he's doing that right now, and he looks like, I think this is what the peak of Arenado is going to look like this year. There's a little bit of pop, but he's starting to hit for some average again. I think they'll be able to be fine in this stretch. I don't think this is going to just fall out from under them here in the stretch. Now, that being said, I don't think they're also going to go on this huge run and potentially really leapfrog the Cubs or maybe get right back in this race. I think they're probably about 500 in this stretch.
I think that might be enough, though. If you stay afloat during this stretch of time, that might be just enough to be able to keep you in this thing long enough to get Von Herrera back into your lineup and to force John Mozeliak's hand of, I don't know about being a buyer, but at least not being a seller as we approach.
At minimum, we get the classic lineup. Well, he's just as good as making a trade.
Stalter's going to be excited about that one. From the 314, guys, I think you're worried about the wrong thing. As long as the pitching is good, the Cardinals will be fine. They only need to score a ton when they don't pitch well.
That's a lot. That's
another thing is, if you have a lineup that takes a small step back and you go from being like a top 12-ish lineup in Major League Baseball to, let's call it 18th for the next 3 to 6 weeks, now suddenly you have that much more pressure that is applied on your pitching staff. And against the Cubs, against the Pirates, you can make that work. Against Cleveland, you could probably make that work. Against the Cubs, that's where things get a little dicey because this is an offense that can absolutely expose any crack that exists within your pitching. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer. But next, Alex, where do the Blues currently stand among the teams with the best center depth in the NHL? There was a rankings that was released earlier today. We'll pass along their findings next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-500-5000.
Listen to 101 ESPN on demand. Get caught up on all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN podcasts are presented by the Schaefer Door Company. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Cubs come calling. I'm Bradford Bruns with a Sports Center update powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Tonight at 6:45, St. Louis and Chicago clash for the first time this season. Matthew Liberatore as well as Ben Brown are your scheduled starters. Cincinnati just avoided that sweep versus STL, whereas Craig Counsell's team lost 2 of 3 to Seattle. NHL Florida's championship celebration will soon give way to draft spectacle LA style. Our first round coverage from Enterprise Center beginning Friday post Fastlane. Earlier, Blues GM Doug Armstrong discussed possible market activity.
We're trying to be honest with everyone that we believe in what we're trying to do, building around that group of players 25 and under, and we would like to continue to do that. But there are expectations of success. The players above that age group, they believe, and I believe with them, that we can win. So we're trying to serve two masters now, and we think we can do that.
This Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
Broadcasting live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you missed it, we did have a conversation with Doug Armstrong, Blues president of hockey operations, earlier today. Highly recommend checking out that interview in its entirety over on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. He was in studio with us for about 15 minutes. We talked about all things from the draft to the plans and free agency, how Dalibor Dvorsky impacts their plans and free agency, and why this year is so much different when it comes to what the free agent market is going to be like. It's the first time in about 5 years, Alex, so they think there's going to be some real sticker shock for people as we head to free agency. And speaking of free agency, the place where the Blues are most likely to add there, this is according to Doug Armstrong when he was in with us, is center. That'd be the spot that they would look to upgrade. Over on The Athletic earlier today, they put together their rankings of which NHL teams most desperately need to upgrade at center. For context on this, the top 5 in terms of their center depth. 1, you'll never believe this, they think the Edmonton Oilers are very good at
I thought it was going to be the
position.
San Jose Sharks with Macklin Celebrini.
Number 1 is Edmonton. Number 2, the Vegas Golden Knights. Number 3, the Devils. Number 4, the Colorado Avalanche. And at number 5, the Dallas Stars. I do not think it is a coincidence that those are all, for the most part, outside of New Jersey, legit Stanley Cup contenders. Number 6 is Tampa Bay. Like, when you are good down the middle, you are a very good team. And Army said that earlier today as well. You look up the middle, that's the way you want to build your roster. For the Blues, they came in at number 19 on this list, Alex. They said the Blues are most looking for a middle 6 center. They added this. Shin looked great once Jim Montgomery took over, meshing well with a line that included Holloway and Kyrou. But if we're looking at the league's best teams, second-line center is definitely an area where the Blues are lacking in comparison. Shifting Shin down would be the ideal move, allowing him to win bottom 6 matchups. Without a superstar forward, St. Louis's best bet is to build a depth advantage. If that cannot be accomplished, the Blues at the very least need a trustworthy player behind Shin. Sonny simply will not cut it as a third-line center. Alex, do you agree with that general ranking, and what do you think of their write-up there?
Yeah, I agree with it. I think they were middle of the pack. Before I read the article, that's where I assumed it would be, and 19, a little bit lower than middle of the pack. And look, he's not wrong. They've got to upgrade over Sundqvist. That's not the issue here. Like, that's the hope. The problem is what they're talking about, to me, I don't think is possible in this year's offseason. You got to upgrade over Shen. Right now, I think what their task is upgrade over Sundqvist so that Shen is 2. Maybe the person that you bring in can be a 2 if you squint hard enough, but at best, he's a really good number 3. I was just going through this in my mind because when Doug was talking with us before the show and the media availability, he talked about, going from 10, but you want to be closer to 6th than 10 in the Western Conference standings, meaning you'd rather be 3rd in the Central Division rather than last team in the wild card spot. And the wild card teams were If I'm not mistaken, it was St. Louis and Minnesota, right? Minnesota was the other wild card team?
This year it was St. Louis and Minnesota, with Calgary one basically tied with you, but you won the tiebreaker.
So take out the teams that we just listed there. Like, take out Edmonton, Vegas, L.A. I would put in that conversation, Dallas, Colorado, Winnipeg. Those are the 6 teams that you kind of are certain they're going to be there. If you were to look at the other teams in terms of their first and second center, meaning Schenn is it, I would have the Blues towards the top of that conversation. Like, I think they're better than Minnesota because their second-line center was used as a fourth-line center, and they're going to have to upgrade that via free agency or trade, and I don't know how they're doing that.
They obviously agree with you. They were one of the teams most interested in Brock Nelson, according to reports.
So
they clearly agree with your assessment there.
I think the Blues have a better number 1 and number 2 center than Utah. At least, I mean, Logan Cooley's really good, but he's young, and then from there we're talking like Nick Schmaltz or something like that, who's only good against the Blues. Calgary, you're talking Kadri and Morgan Frost. Vancouver, you're talking Elias Pettersson and shoulder shrug emoji because they don't have Miller anymore, and Pius Suter's going to be gone. And then you've got the Anaheim Ducks, who have Leo Carlsson and Mason McTavish. The reason I'm doing this is because if Doug said I want to be closer to the 6 than the 10, if we're going off of strength down the middle, I think the Blues are better than all of these teams are competing with in terms of their 1 and 2 center. Where you get questionable is that third-line center, Oscar Sundqvist. So that's the spot that you need to go. But
and to be clear here, they were comparing them not to those teams you just mentioned, but to Dallas and Colorado and Vegas and LA and Edmonton. Those are the teams that they were talking about because they said, how do they compare to the top contenders?
Yeah.
Not well in your top 6.
Yeah.
I agree with you, though. Braden Schenn, compared to a lot of these other teams, what they're looking at their second-line center as of today, he's fine. He's not great. He's not going to give you a decided advantage in that area, but he's fine. You need to upgrade that third-line center desperately. That's the spot where I look at it and I'm like, you don't have the same as what these other teams
But to the point of what Doug said in the availability with the sticker shock, that's where you got to be cautious. Because don't get overly aggressive to fix that spot and deal with the sticker shot versus can you go find something via trade on the outside. That's how I feel like you can upgrade over the center position is you're going to have to find the trade. And maybe it is that next tier down that Doug was talking about, the deals you make on July 15th in free agency that aren't going to cost you a whole lot. Maybe there's a trade that happens 3 weeks into free agency once teams kind of see what the landscape looks like and the dust settles. But that is the obvious upgrade. If you can get better than Sundqvist and keep Schenn at 2 and then find somebody that could be a 2 or a 3, in my opinion, you are much closer to that number 6 team in the West versus number 10 like Doug talked about.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Look, where it comes down to they're going to upgrade that third line spot, that also I have no idea where that's coming from to our earlier conversation as well, because I'm not sure that Army wants to go with significant term on those guys. Like you mentioned Suter, right? Suter's a guy that can play second or third line center for the Blues.
You're talking about Pius Suter, not Ryan Suter.
Well, Ryan Suter playing a second line center
with the Vancouver Canucks. Yes.
Sorry, Ryan.
Sorry, Ryan. That guy's going to want probably 4 or 5 years. And you mentioned like the sticker shock in free agency.
Yeah.
Hearing Army speak today makes me think, one, he's well aware of the sticker shock that's about to come for free agency. And 2, it doesn't seem like they want to go make a big splash or they don't want to be a team, because he mentioned a lot about, hey, there's times where you can hand out money, it can be a bad contract, and then you can get out of it in 2 years. He doesn't sound like he wants to necessarily be that team that's handing out those long-term deals that they may regret in a year or two. So I think he's exploring the free agent market, but I guess that would, or the trade market. I guess that would be easier for a third-line center, but it's hard to pinpoint where that guy's coming from.
I would add this, though. I don't want to read too much into what he said there. And let me explain.
You think he's lying?
No, I don't think he's lying. I think he's talking about Chandler Stevenson, would be my guess, right? Is like that kind of a contract. Chandler Stevenson was a $6+ million deal.
7, wasn't it?
For 7 years. That's much different than a 4 by 5.5 type of a contract. Pius Suter, if he ends up getting a 4 or 5 year deal, and it's at like 5 years by 4 or 4 years by 5, however you want to structure it. That is very similar to what they decided to do when they brought in 7 years ago now, 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now, I guess, Tyler Bozak. It's the same kind of contract. And I guess the difference would be the life cycle, right? At that point, the Blues were trying to push for 2019. Right now, after hearing Army, and he's been consistent with this since his end-of-season presser availability, they're not at that mode right now. Right now, and correct me if you disagree with this, Alex, they seem to be in a spot where they're still in the building process. They're further along in that process, but they're still building. I think their hope, this is my reading between the lines, is that within like the next year or two, that's when they get into push mode. And they're like, all right, our core group of players are here. We've had a couple of years of playoff experience. Now let's push with them together. And that's when you make potentially the big move or the supplementary moves that you think can help get you over the top. I don't think they feel as though they're there right now. And I don't know what that means for Pius Suter, because they're clearly not in the Bennett market. They might not be in the Pius Suter market. And I don't know that there is a third market this year.
Yeah, well, and to me, Pius Suter is the push mode. Like, you're paying to get that so you can be a contender. And the way that Doug said it in the availability was the Holloway and Broberg, what we found out about them, it expedited the retool process by 3 years. But he said we still believe we're in the retool path. It just sped up the process of 3 years. So if that's the case, he has said in the past, Doug, that they're done accumulating assets. Correct. Now they're in the business of seeing what these assets are. I think rather than go the Suter route, they would say, let's see what Dvorsky can do before we go spend money in that spot.
I didn't get that sense at all. I got the opposite sense.
I got the sense of them using a Dvorsky the same way that they used a Robert Thomas to see if he can be an asset on the wing and maybe use.
Where do you do that?
Third line wing.
For who?
That's the internal competition that I don't know.
I don't think that this is my read on it, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just like my perspective from what we saw today. I don't think Dalibor Dvorsky has any chance of making this opening night roster. I'd be shocked if Dalibor Dvorsky is on the opening night roster.
I won't say any chance, because there's a chance that I could see it happen. It comes down to internal competition, and you win that competition. I don't know what that looks like, and frankly, I don't think they know what that looks like. I don't think it's certain. I think I'm closer to believing the Blues are on that path than going after a Pius Suter path.
I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I think it's far more likely they go Suter, because I just don't see any scenario where you end up opening night saying, yeah, Dalibor Dvorsky's on this roster and is a like middle six type of a player. I don't think there are wing spots available, and I don't think they want him, because he mentioned teams fail players before players fail teams. And I think they still view him as not being ready for that.
Maybe. And I don't know what the offseason holds. I don't know what training camp holds. But I don't see them in the business for Pius Suter, because Pius Suter seems like that's the push mode in terms of the sticker shock and paying. Pius Suter is going to be a guy that signs on July 1st or July 2nd. Like, make no mistake about it. He is one of the top centermen available. Teams that need center are going to pay for Suter. And that, to me, is a push that the Blues aren't in a position to do. What comes after that?
That's what I'm asking.
Know.
What's the pivot? That's what I feel like we're all missing.
And I don't. But there's no other free agents on the market unless there's guys that are under the radar that we don't know about.
What if it's Granlund? And the reason that I bring this up, I mean, none of us are excited about this, right? None of us are excited about the idea of a smaller, slower, no defense center that probably is best on the wing.
But that defeats the purpose of a 200-foot offensive player.
He said today very clearly, like, I don't know that guy exists.
You're going to go sign a guy, pay more than what he's worth for a guy that doesn't exist?
But I think
I'm saying I think Granlund, if all of us view him that way, maybe the rest of the league does as well. And so instead of them going out on July 1st saying Granlund's our guy, well, maybe they say, yeah, we'll get to him when we get to him. And so July 2nd and 3rd comes, and it feels like it's going to be a long summer, and he says, you know what? I'll just take a one-year deal worth $5 million. And I'll try to recoup some of my value, try to go to a contender. This is real money. I mean, if you're Mikael Granlund, like $5 million is not nothing, right? And he goes out and he has another good year, and hopefully he can get more next year when the cap continues to rise. Like, maybe that's the kind of guy that ends up as your quote-unquote pivot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't...
He's also up there in age.
Yeah, I don't see... Maybe. I just don't see them. I think he's also going to be one of those guys in the first couple of days of free agency that are going to go because he's a big name.
He might be, and if there's not, like, you mentioned the trade market. I'm with you. That'd be great. Army also said, like, yo, who you trading with?
Yep.
Because all these teams out there,
that's why
the ones that have players, they're trying to win. And if you're trying to win, generally speaking, you don't trade centers.
Yeah, but that's why I think you're going to have to wait, which nobody wants to do, or at least you guys don't have the appetite to do because you want to see the roster improve. I think you're going to have to wait till other teams make moves. once other teams bring in players and realize like we're going to have to do something.
Isn't it just one team, though? Aren't we just talking about Vegas?
I don't think so. I think there's other teams that fall into this category. I think Ottawa could be a team that if they go out there and try and upgrade the defensive spot, they have to make moves on their side of things. I still think Dallas might be another team that decides to make a move at some point.
But what are you getting from Dallas?
I don't know.
Oh, can we get Robertson?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like,
Oh, wait,
You got to find out where Marner signs, where Bennett signs, where a Suter signs, where a Granlund signs, because teams that sign those guys think these players are obvious upgrades over what we have.
Or they're like you and they need middle six centers.
Yeah, but
And so, like, yes, we signed that player because we didn't have a player.
right,
like
but
this
in
before.
Vegas' sense, they've got 4 centers that are getting paid more than what they're worth in that one.
Agreed.
Ottawa's got 4 of them.
Ottawa, maybe that's the team. Vegas feels like the pipe dream. Like, it feels like we're propping up Vegas to be this thing that I don't know if it's actually there or not. And if they decide to go sign Mitch Marner and now they have to trade William Karlsson, all right, we can have that conversation. I'm happy to have it. That's the ideal world, right? I think you had him as part of your, like, this is the best case scenario offseason for the Blues. I agree with you. What are the odds of any of this actually happening? I think pretty slim, because most of these teams, like if you sign Pius Suter, you're not doing that because you're loaded with center depth. You're doing that because you're desperate. That's how you end up with Pius Suter making $5 million on your team. That's how the Blues could end up in that spot, right? We don't see another alternative, so let's go get somebody that can solidify our third-line center for us. Like, who are these other centers that are signing and pushing guys off of roster spots? It's not Granlund.
No.
He might sign to be a wing somewhere. Maybe John Tavares? Maybe. And that's probably the one guy. So we're talking about 2 players that could potentially create this opportunity for the Blues to capitalize on. And they'll both almost certainly sign on July 1st, like the moment that free agency signs. I don't know, man. This is a tough spot to be in if you're Doug Armstrong. This is a really difficult offseason. I feel like most of the time that we've done the show together, we've been able to easily pinpoint, here are like 3 or 4 players that make all the sense in the world for the Blues. This is who they're almost certainly going to be targeting.
You guys called the Sod signing.
Yeah, it was not hard to do. They needed a winger that could score 20 goals per season, play him on the second line, and boom, there's a guy that immediately fits that criteria with Brandon Saad. It's how you called the Pavel Buchnevich thing, Alex. Mm-hmm. This offseason, I don't think there is that obvious answer. I don't think it exists.
Yeah, I mean, like, just look at the center market for free agency, and I mean, there's not much to get excited about, but you're probably going down the path of taking a chance on a guy for 1 or 2 years rather than going at the top of the market. Like, we didn't get to it on Friday, but Nick Bukestad with the Utah Hockey Club, like that was a third-line center for them. It's a big guy. Do they take a chance on that? Winnipeg's got this Mason Appleton that was on their 4th or 3rd line in the playoffs. Do you take a shot on that? That seems, if they're not going the trade route, that seems more in line with what they'd be doing once free agency opens up rather than Suter or Granlund. But regardless, you don't like the answer because there's just, unless a guy becomes available that you didn't expect becomes available, there's not options that make you feel warm and fuzzy inside.
I think odds are, I mean, to that point right there, I think odds are when we get done July, I don't know, I'll say 3rd to be on the safe side. I think odds are you're going to look at whatever move it is they make and probably go, what do they see, right? Is this really that much of an upgrade for the St. Louis Blues? Because you're right, there's
Joseph or Texier move.
There's not a obvious upgrade, and I think it's going to leave a lot of people potentially questioning. Okay, was that the move that the Blues needed to make if they were going to make that 5% improvement?
Yeah, there are very, very few obvious options this offseason. Somebody said at that point, just re-sign Faksa. I'm all in favor of re-signing Faksa no matter what. And then having Sonny as one of your extra forwards going into the season, but you have to have somebody that is available, that is an obvious upgrade over Oscar Sundqvist. And to be frank, that's not all that hard to do as a middle 6 center at this point in Sonny's career. But you've just got to go do it. And finding that guy is not an easy thing. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved to the show. We've referenced it a number of times, but if you missed our conversation with Doug Armstrong, be sure to check that out on the podcast page after the show today or YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, time for the junk drawer here on BK and Ferrario.
The NBA Draft is on ESPN. Night 1 is Wednesday night. Coverage starts at 6:30. Your home for the NBA is 101 ESPN. WXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
All right, Alex. So T-Bone did the beer mile challenge a couple of years ago as part of our pick'em punishment, right?
Yep.
There's a new challenge that is taking place in the Appalachian Trail. Sam Cooper just participated. He had gone 7 miles through a stretch of the trail when he sat down and opened up his ice cream. Why? Because Sam Cooper, who is 32 years old, is participating in the new half-gallon ice cream challenge that they are doing on this part of the trail. So what you do, halfway through, you open up your ice cream, you eat the half-gallon, and then you finish the trail afterwards. He said it was absolutely miserable. He said he hopes nobody else does this. And it's like 2,500 calories to eat this thing of ice cream and then finish the trail afterwards. You are called a, quote, through hiker, end quote, that celebrate the trail's halfway point by downing a half-gallon of ice cream. Should we add this to our pick'em punishment for 2025?
My answer is yes.
No,
Yes.
because there would be only trails that would be is probably in my pants if
That's
I did
fine.
this. Because
Not so happy trails.
I threw up live on Facebook.
Don't
You can
care.
do that in,
Throwing
live
up
on
is a lot
Facebook.
different than going number 2 in your pants. So no, sirree. The lactose intolerance, I will put myself out of that conversation.
That just sounds.
You two can have the punishment, but I'm out on that one.
That sounds awful.
Going 7 miles on a trail
It's gotta
after
be-
you had 2,500 calories.
Yeah.
of
It's
ice
got to be
cream
like selective
sounds-
timing.
At first, I would think, boy, this is nice, right? It's cool. It's refreshing.
No.
And then you get probably about halfway through that thing, you're like, oh, first off, my stomach's hurting. Second off, I have to run more. That sounds awful.
Third of all, I have the runs. Like, no. This is terrible.
About 1 in 3 people who launch through the hike take the roughly 5 million steps required to go the distance, often walking from the south to the north. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to accomplish.
Isn't the Appalachian Trail pretty hilly, too?
Yeah.
I don't
It's
understand,
in
like...
mountains.
These people are creating these challenges themselves. Like, are you going to go brag to somebody afterwards? Like, hey, man, just walked the Appalachian Mountains,
Well,
and
I
I just
mean-
had ice cream in the middle of it.
So you're saying I shouldn't have, I ran a beer mile on my Tinder profile?
Yours was a punishment, not something to brag about.
Oh, so you're saying I should take it off?
Like, if this person walked up to me afterwards and was like, hey, man, say a half a gallon of ice cream and just walked, cool. That was a terrible decision, and you are dumb for trying.
Sure, but
This
aren't you
was-
impressed?
No.
This was definitely something that was created on social media.
Yeah. This guy was
Like-
bored and was like, I want to make myself look cooler than what I am.
Well,
I'm going to do a challenge.
Apparently it's a thing. So this must have
course
been
it
like a
is.
TikTok thing that started up, and now it's become...
Somebody said, what are 2 things
Popular.
that I like that I can make a quote-unquote challenge? And they went, well, I like hiking, I like ice cream. Okay, I've got an idea.
Like, you know what? Next time we're going to do this, just look at the Guinness Book of World Records, look at one of those, and then try and beat that.
That's not cool.
Oh,
He's
it's very
Alex.
cool.
That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Bradford Bruns back in the studio for us today. Coming up next, Alex, I want to do a quick comparison between the Cardinals and the Cubs. What they have done against the quality teams on their schedule and what they have done against the bad teams on their schedule. What does it tell us about these two teams as they match up this week? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
is on 101 ESPN.
Get the inside scoop on and off the ice with the Last Minute Blues podcast with Alex Ferrario, Jeremy Rutherford, and Donnie Fandango.
Blues opinion, talk, and speculation. It's what we do.
Watch or listen to the Last Minute Blues podcast on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. Live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
So far this season, the St. Louis Cardinals are 21-24 against teams that are currently above 500. Against those exact same opponents, the Chicago Cubs are 24-25. So you're 3 games under 500 against them. They are 1 game under 500. So pretty similar in that regard. Jeff Jones just tweeted this out as well. Against teams that are currently in last place in their respective divisions, the Cubs are 15 games above 500. They're 18-4 against them. The Cardinals, they're 6 games above 500 against them, but they've only played 12 such games. They've only played 12 games against teams that are currently in last place in their division. They're 9-3 against them. So the Cubs, I believe, are a legitimately good baseball team. I really do believe that. I don't think that they're a mirage. I don't think this is all created because they have beat up on these bad teams, but that is what has happened. If you're just looking at the record has primarily been built by the Cubs playing against these crap teams on their schedule. They did against them what the Cardinals just did against the Chicago White Sox over the last week, right? I am fascinated to see how these teams match up against one another. And it's so rare that it takes this long for us to get to see that opportunity. But you mentioned earlier today, Alex, that you're excited because of the anticipation that is building between 2 teams that are legitimately competing for a playoff spot, and they're going head-to-head this late in the season. Like, I want to see how the Cardinals match up. We saw this with them against Philly. We saw it against the Dodgers, but those are just different because it's not in the division. It's not the Cubs. This one has a different feel to it. When you hear that, Alex, what these teams have done, which is remarkably similar, both in terms of what they are against the bad teams on their schedule and what they've done against the teams that are above 500, how do you view these 2 teams relative to one another heading into the series?
I mean, I'll tell you the opportunity with the series from what you just told me the narrative can flip for both of these teams depending on the outcome of the series. Like if the Cardinals take 3 or 4, people might look at this and say maybe the Cubs aren't the best team in the NL Central. But if the Cardinals lose 3 or 4 or get swept, then I think you might be looking at this saying maybe the Cards weren't as good as we thought they were. When you said that, the first thing I did was I pulled up their schedule, the Cubs, and I was just kind of looking at specific teams that they matched up against and how they fared. Like they lost 2 of 3 against the Phillies. The Cardinals had success against the Phillies. They lost 2 of 3 against the Tigers. Now I know the Cardinals did as well, but the losses that they had against the Tigers were 4-0, 3-1, and then they won 6-1. Like the Cardinals games against the Tigers were a lot closer than that in terms of what the outcomes were. Now, I also look at they lost 2 of 3 against the Mets. They lost 2 of 3 against the Dodgers. They lost both series against the Padres. And some of those we haven't really seen for the Cardinals yet. Like this to me is the opportunity for one team to come out of this and say, this is our division to lose. And if the Cubs take 3 or 4 or even split in this, I think there's going to be a lot of confidence on the Cubs side, regardless of how they've played against better competition. They're going to feel like they can't be stopped because everyone else below them, they've beaten the Brewers twice that they played against them, and this is the first series against the Cards. But if the Cards take 3 or 4 in this one on top of the better teams that they have beaten this season, I kind of feel like the Cardinals may have the confidence boost from that series, which might catapult them at least to more success before the trade deadline.
Yeah, I agree with that on how this series kind of makes the perception feel around the Cubs / the Cardinals. And the reason I say that is when you talk about the Cubs, the Cardinals, it feels like have been, 5 games back of them throughout the season. It's just always been like, well, boy, there's the Chicago Cubs. I've even said on the air at times when I think they've opened up to about 7 or 8 games, yeah, it looks like you're going to have to get in via the wild card if you're going to be a playoff team. You take 3 or 4 from the Cubs, and all of a sudden you get to see them in person as a Cardinals fan or us in the media covering the team. You can suddenly go from wow, that team kind of feels like they're going to win the division just hands down to, oh, wait a minute, they're not as scary as they look on paper, right? You hold your serve against them. Now you feel a little bit better. Or to your point on if the Cubs do win the series, it can just reinforce that opinion of, well, wow, yeah, it is the Cubs. This is the Cubs division to win. So if you're going to be a playoff team, you got to be it in the wild card. That's what is on the line for the Cardinals in this series from a fan's perception, from us in the media, and honestly probably in what Mo is looking at right now. This will be the first time that Mo gets to see them in person to where he can say, how do we stack up? And he can say, you know what, they're just clearly better than us. Or he can say, you know what, we can give them a run if we potentially add some pieces to this thing.
And I do think the Cardinals can give this team a run. I don't know that they will. I think this Ivan Herrera injury really, it bums me out because he should have been for your lineup. It's different. They go about it in different ways. But he should have been that young stud player that's in the middle of your order that boosts your lineup the way that Pete Crow Armstrong has been for the Chicago Cubs. Right? Again, I want to make this very clear. They go about it in very different ways. Pete Crow Armstrong is power plus speed. Herrera is just the all-around versatile bat that's in the middle of your order. But they both add huge value with what they're able to do right now at the plate. And you look around them, well, the Cubs have Kyle Tucker, and that's something you just can't claim to have. You don't have that piece. I do think the Cardinals' depth is a little better. I think the Cardinals, you look at the bottom portion of their order, I think it's a little better than what the Cubs have to offer. I think the Cubs' rotation is a little better than what the Cardinals have to offer, especially now that they're getting Shota Imanaga back. And they've really done a good job over this winter, over the previous winter, to overhaul their bullpen as well. So I don't think it's a huge gap between where the Cubs are at and where the Cardinals are at right now, but you got to go prove it. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And it's, to me, Alex, we keep talking about it as like this series. I would combine the next two series against the Cubs because you've got 7 games in your next 13 that are head-to-head against the Chicago Cubs. If you went 3-1 against them in this series, and then you get swept in the next one, well, what does it really mean? Yeah. Right? You ended up going 3-4 overall against Chicago.
Win both series.
Yeah, you have to be probably in this 7-game stretch. Can you go 4-3? You gain a game in the standings, and now you're 3.5 back. It's a pretty good spot to be in. You're within striking distance, and you've given yourself the opportunity to catapult up as you go up against Washington, Atlanta, and then ultimately come back in the second half of the season. That, to me, should be the goal here. You've got to finish above 500 against the Cubs.
Yeah, and this is just me personally. I'm sure might be others that have different. I don't think you can afford to split in this series with them. I think you need to win both series to put yourself in a position.
Why? Is it because of the road? Because like a Wrigley, I mentioned when they went to Milwaukee, like you want to talk about a
you got to capitalize on the home
scenario.
Games.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Especially when you look at July and August and September, they play a lot more games at home versus the road.
I think I misunderstood you. I thought you meant like if they go 4-3, but you did so while splitting the first series and then winning 2 out of 3 in the next one. Like that's fine to me. You're saying you think it's unlikely they could win 2 out of 3 in Wrigley.
I think the road is just a unknown for me right now. To where I feel like when you're in the prime position of being a team that seems to thrive on home field advantage, you've got to win those games because the road can just be so kind of a question mark.
Yeah, and the Cardinals have been great at home so far this year. They're 24-15 when they are at Busch Stadium. They're below 500 away from Busch Stadium this year.
Plus, success in this series puts pressure on Chicago.
No doubt.
Rather than you splitting or losing this series and then them having the pressure when you go on the road.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, I'm loving how depressed BK is about the Herrera injury. Almost guaranteed that the Birds bat will come alive now. I hope that's the case. I would have loved nothing more than to see them overcome this injury as if it was nothing. You get to the deadline, he comes back. That's the bat that you needed, and now you feel good about all of the other guys that got this opportunity in the meantime as well. That would be wonderful. I live in what I think is reality, and it's a really big loss, man. All year long, we were talking about how that is so clearly the best bat in the lineup. I'm not now just going to overlook the fact that he's potentially going to be out for the next 6 weeks. It's a huge. If I told you before the season, hey, Wilson Contreras is going to miss 2 months of the regular season, we would have all said, oh my God, what's going to happen to that offense while he's out? And that is effectively what Ivan Herrera has become in your lineup, is what we thought Wilson Contreras could potentially be this year, and he will now have missed 2 months of the season, depending on how long he's going to be out for this hamstring strain.
And to your point, it's not a 1-for-1, but if you pull Pete Crow Armstrong from the Cubs lineup, they've got a guy named Kyle Tucker that's there to help kind of ease the loss of a Pete Crow Armstrong.
But also, I think it would change a lot of things if they lost Pete Crow Armstrong.
I agree. I think it would hurt them. I still think they would be a pretty good offensive team because they have Kyle Tucker. I don't know who that guy is that you lean on now. Maybe it is Burleson, maybe it is Contreras, but they have to do it more of kind of like the Blues when it comes to what the way they're built. they got to do it more pack mentality than just one guy.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to revisit our conversation with Doug Armstrong from earlier today. We'll go through some of the biggest things that we were able to hit on with Army and our takeaways from his availability with the media earlier today as well. We'll do that in 15 minutes. In or out coming up next year on BK and Ferrario.
Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about my friends out at Classic Air Care. Look, as we get hotter and hotter outside, that means the importance goes even further into the HVAC system in your house. And on top of that, you got to be using the company that is out to take care of you. And Classic Air Care has been making people comfortable since 1926. One thing that they emphasized this past weekend, which is out there as well, no overtime charges if you've got to call them on the weekend, and they will make sure that they get out to your home. Again, no overtime charges from this past weekend, and it's going to be there again as the heat continues with your HVAC system. I've been using them since 2016, but don't just go by what I'm telling you. Check out the over thousands reviews that they have up on their Google Plus page. 5-star review like this one from Michelle. Outstanding service as always. Anthony, a professional, efficient, kind, and provided explanation of multiple questions that we had about our HVAC system and our furnace unit. Also pointed out that our sump pump was not functioning, which have saved us from possible upcoming flooding issues. So make sure you're using the company that is out to protect you and your home at Classic Air Care. You can schedule online, check out their maintenance agreement. They also have financing options if you're looking to purchase an HVAC system. All of it available at their website, classicaircare.com. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. Schedule today, Classic Air Care and classicaircare.com.
You can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Come on, man. Are you in or are you out? It's in or out with BK and Ferrario.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Guys, I saw this from Bob Nightingale's piece earlier today over on USA Today. Quote, rival teams would love to get their hands on Cardinal starters Sonny Gray and Miles Michaelis, but they have full no-trade clauses and have no interest in waiving them, end quote.
Oh, yeah, we're buyers.
Guys, in or out, the Cardinals at the trade deadline will trade a starter, but his name will be Eric Fetty.
Oh, in. I guess you can't trade. You're not trading Sonny Gray. You can't trade Miles Michaelis because you don't want to just destroy the depth of this team. And
more importantly, he doesn't want to leave, so you can't because he's got a no-trade clause.
Fair on both fronts, but that one's a little more surprising to me. But yeah, in. I mean, this article or the report could have just said, the Cardinals might trade Eric Fetty. Like that one, we know what's going to happen there. They've got the replacement, and he's starting this series against the Chicago Cubs.
Did you guys find it interesting that they decided to push him to this specific series?
Fetty?
No. What's his face?
McGreevy. I thought that he was I thought he was going to start this series no matter what.
I mean, they could have had him wait until that Cleveland series.
Yeah. I just expected he was starting the Cubs series, so that's why I'm not really taken by surprise.
Okay.
But I'm in on this. It'll be Eric Fetty. Katie, I had it in my ideas for the show on Friday. I don't think we got to it, but Katie had mentioned in a Q&A or a mailbag on The Athletic that, hey, like maybe the Cardinals could do what the Tigers did, which is sell some pieces, then hope to make the playoffs. I think that's what they're going to try and do. Now, where I think they're going to potentially run into an issue there is the Fetty one makes sense, right? I mean, Michael McGreevy should be in this rotation. I'd argue he still belongs in here over Palante, but I digress. He pitched great over the weekend. But you've got that replacement. Where I fear that they're going to go too far is they're going to go, well, we can do what the Tigers can do. We can trade Helsley, and we can trade Maton, and we can fill those spots in our bullpen. I've seen the Memphis Shuttle. There's like one or two arms on there that are intriguing. You can't replace those guys. But, yeah, I would say I'm in on this. They will probably move Fetty.
You guys know where I stand. I think Fetty's going to have real value on the market. I do think he ends up probably getting dealt at this year's trade deadline by the Cardinals because they have a guy that they see internally as his replacement in Michael McGreevy. And how can I argue that? Based on the way that he's been able to pitch so far this year, you leave yourself very thin. But TK Roby looks really good at AAA right now as well. I don't know if he's ready for this level, but by the time you get to August, you only got a couple of months left to be able to cover. I think it makes all the sense in the world.
Quinn Matthews as well. He's looked better in his recent outing or two.
Alex, what do you got for us?
Guys, in or out, 5 teams from the Central Division will make the playoffs in the NHL this year.
I will say in. I mean, they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who from the Pacific is going. Yeah, see, I understand they're trying, and that is a hell of an improvement.
I love what Doug said, too. Like, you don't make that move unless you think you can compete for a playoff spot and bring in
I
Joe
agree.
Quinn,
I think this is year one where they set their foundation, similar to the Cubs, honestly. I hate to bring them up here, but the Cubs hired a manager last year, and I don't think they had the intent of really, like, trying to win at a high level a year ago. I think this year was the year that they were always saying, all right, we got to get this culture in the right place. We got to switch things up a little bit. We're going to go get our manager, and then that's going to allow us to have that success. Anaheim has a lot of room for growth. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of stuff that they still have to get done. I think next year's the year you see them take that step. So, yeah, I'll say in. I think 5 teams from the Central end up getting in.
I'll say in as well. I'm kind of with BK on where Anaheim is. I think they're going to need a year, maybe 2, to kind of figure that all out. And then I just, like Vancouver's, I don't think they're going to be 90 points next year. Calgary, I don't think they're going to be a 96-point team. I think it's going to be the Blues or Utah that ends up getting that other spot. So, yeah, I would say, it's in for 5 teams.
I'm in as well. I think they're going to be the 5th team or at least the 4th team and push Minnesota to the 5th team.
Guys, in or out, the St. Louis Blues will make at least one move on July 1st.
We'll talk about this a little bit more coming up in the next segment, so I'll keep my thoughts brief. I'll say out. I don't think they will make a move on July 1st.
I'll be brief here. I'll say in.
Okay.
And I'll explain on the other side. I said I was going to be brief here.
Oh, yeah, I know, but even his brief had a little explanation.
Nope, you get none. You got to wait.
I like it.
I'll say out as well. I think they'll be a team that waits 2 or 3 days before they make a move. correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph and Texie were not day one, right?
They were.
Oh,
Because we were on the air here at Centene when it happened.
I remember we were here when it happened, but for some reason I was thinking that was like day 2 because we're like, oh boy, this whole free agency thing's kind of boring.
So it was day 1.
July 2nd.
Also, it was day 2.
Okay.
We were here when when it happened, though.
Yeah.
So I guess free agency started at a different day.
Sure.
Because Texier, Foxa, and Joseph were the first 3 moves that they made.
Texier was on June 28th.
So that was the trade.
Oh, that was before free agency.
So that was after the draft, yeah. And I could have sworn that those guys were day 1 when they made those trades with.
Yeah, I can remember. I do remember now that you
Joseph.
say Texier was before free agency. I do remember that
Was
move.
Foxa day
And
1?
July 2nd was Foxa as well.
Day 2.
And what was Ryan?
Foxa and Joseph are both day 2.
And what was Ryan Suter?
Oh, he was later in
late.
the offseason.
Was he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they signed him in at the time. We were like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, he
now
was
you have like
July
8
11th.
defensemen, and it turned out Krug needed surgery.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. From the 618, guys in or out, Walker will be sent to Memphis before this season is over.
Out.
I'm out as well.
You can't. There's no point in sending him down.
Correct.
You're not going to learn anything from him going down to Memphis. Keep him here with Brant Brown.
And you don't have an obvious outfield option. I mean, we saw it. Ryan Valade was their outfield option from
He's
the right
gone
side.
now.
He's gone now. He's with the Reds.
That's the point. He's not here anymore.
or the Angels.
I'll say out as well. I don't think they send him down, and if they do, I think it's a sign of I think they've given up on the project, and I don't think they're going to do that. So, yeah, I'm out.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. In or out, one of Nolan Gorman or Jordan Walker will be traded by the start of the 2026 season. I'll say in, and I think it's Gorman.
I agree. I think Gorman's spot is going to be replaced by Thomas Ajacey.
I think I'm in. I would say I agree on Gorman. I could see a path where they move Walker and capitalize on value if they don't believe that they can fix him. I could see, next offseason could be the last one that he has significant value to be on the market.
It'd be
so I would
wild
say
to see both of them packaged together in one trade.
What a return, though.
There was your future, Cardinals fans.
Yeah, you want to.
This is the next.
You want to see how we get our Kyle Tucker? There's our package,
It'll be more
baby.
your Matthew Liberatore.
From the 618, guys, in or out, the Blues' new logo branding being revealed tomorrow will be better than the one that it has been up until now. Alex, people are really interested in this. I'm not saying excited, but people are either very upset about it, they're very excited about it. There's very little in between. I don't really have big opinions on the matter. I think a team like the Blues, kind of similar to what the Cardinals did with their City Connects jerseys. I know this is the official logo, but with the City Connects jerseys, they didn't want to do anything crazy. I don't think the Blues are going to do anything overly crazy here either. So I guess I don't think they would be doing this unless they thought it was probably a smart move.
Yeah, background with this, I have a little inside information. I've seen what this is going to look like. We'll have a special episode that comes out tomorrow of the Last Minute Blues podcast.
Oh, cool.
Of us talking with some members from the Blues that were a part of this.
Where people can find that tomorrow?
Yeah, it's going to be up on YouTube. I believe once the announcement is made, then we'll have the episode that goes out.
Cool. So Last Minute Blues podcast, once the announcement is out, if you want to learn more behind-the-scenes information on how this all came to be, check it out, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. It's where you can see Alex Ferrario interviewing people with the organization on how they decided to make this change. It's cool.
I can tell you that it's awesome. I think the concern from a group of people is when you change something that's been around for such a long time, you get worried. It's oh, come on, man. Don't screw this up.
When he made a blue jersey red for the Blues?
That was not screwing it up. That was one of the best moments of my childhood, so please shut your mouth. But, I don't, this isn't a matter of, they're changing the way that it looks. They're enhancing it, and I could just tell you it's going to be awesome.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll hit the rewind. But next, we're going to revisit our conversation with Doug Armstrong. Tell you guys what some of the biggest things were that we learned from him, what he had to say about Joel Hofer, what he had to say about the draft upcoming, and how he plans to view July 1st and why this year is a little different than it has been in the past. We'll give you all of that coming up next here on BK and Ferrario.
101 ESPN has your chance to win free tickets to see Collective Soul and live with
ESPN has your chance to meet Adam Wainwright at this year's Big League Bash at the Factory July 27th. Our winner will receive 2 tickets to the Big League Bash, featuring Adam Wainwright in concert, along with appearances from Cardinals players and Fred Bird, a silent auction, and more. All to support Big League Impact. Plus, our winner and guests will receive 2 passes to meet Waino prior to the show. Tickets to the Big League Bash, supported by Community America Credit Union, are on sale now. Find all the details and that chance to win free Big League Bash tickets and meet and greet passes to meet Adam Wainwright right now at 101ESPN.com and on your 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Cubs crash into town at last. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. It took 89 days of regular season action, but St. Louis and Chicago finally renewing their rivalry downtown. First pitch set for 6:45 p.m. as Matthew Liberatore will take the mound. His counterpart, none other than Ben Brown. Craig Counsell's team remaining atop those NL Central standings. Third place STL narrowly missed sweeping Cincinnati. NBA Finals, Oklahoma City needed all 7 games to outduel Indiana. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander capturing MVP honors, averaging 30 points during said series. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Broadcasting live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Fedurko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. By the way, shout out to Doty for helping us with all of the audio stuff today out here at the Centene Community Ice Center. We thought about probably an hour before the show, there was a legitimate chance we would not be able to be here for Doug Armstrong, who made himself available to us both on the show and prior to the show today. So shout out to Doty for making that possible. Shout out to Bradford Bruns as well, who's back in the studio for us today to allow for T-Bone to be here with us at Centene. All right, Alex, so as I mentioned, we got to talk to Army before the show today with all of the rest of the media for about 30 minutes. And then he joined us on our show for 15 minutes. If you missed any of that conversation, check it out. It's on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Want to get to a couple of things from our show and from overall his conversation before we play a couple of clips from the media availability. Let's start out with his free agency approach. He mentioned specifically, both with us and prior to, he thinks that if you add about 20% to what you think a player is going to be worth, and you add another year to the contract, now you're in the conversation. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you will get that player on July 1st, but it means you're in the conversation. He seems to believe this is going to be a very different market than what it was during the COVID years. What is your anticipation for some of the sticker shock that we could see in free agency?
I think it's going to be high, very high. Like, I think... You know that feeling that once you were able to go out again after COVID and, like, you got to spread your arms a little bit and you got excited, you're like, yeah, we're back.
Did you do that?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. It was a while ago. But I think that's what's going to happen. Like, these general managers are going to see the opportunity in the cap going up and saying, whoo-hoo, we're going to spread our arms out a little bit, boys. Let's go throw $13 million. I also think what some of the sticker shock is going to surprise people with is I don't know if we're going to see 6, 7, 8 year contract handed out. I think you're going to see short-term deals because these players are like, well, I'm just going to go 2, get my money now, and then do another 2 and get my money again. Like, LeBron was reporting over the weekend that Connor McDavid, now I know he's not a UFA this offseason, but he's more likely to go a 2 or 3 year route rather than an 8 year route. Mitch Marner sounds like he could go 2 or 3 years rather than go the full 7 or 8 years, whatever's available to him.
And just before you continue, that is something that we've seen in the NBA. T-Bone, you've seen this a lot. Like, NBA guys, especially superstars, will go 2-year contracts. Yeah. They'll go 2-year increments because the cap continues to spike by such a high level that, man, locking myself in long-term actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I can otherwise get a better deal every time that the cap keeps going up. I can continue to cash in, and most importantly for the NBA, I think you're starting to see some of this in the NHL as well, you can exert more power within the organization. If I'm always at risk of potentially going back to market, well, I can tell you what I need, and that is how somebody like Connor McDavid can say, oh, yeah, I'll do a 2-year deal with you.
Yeah.
And then if they don't give him what he wants, if they aren't able to win at the highest possible level, well, then he leaves.
Yep.
So the organization has to continue throwing assets at winning right now.
And what I find fascinating with that is that means those stars like the Marners, the Bennetts, the Marchands, the Ekblads that are going to this market, they're the ones that fall into the 2 or 3 years, see what's out there, and then I could go pick the guys that are going to sign the long-term deals are the ones that probably don't believe they can continue the pace that they were just on. Like Pius Suter to me screams a guy that first team that's willing to give him 5 or 6 years, let's do that. Mikael Granlund, if somebody's willing to give me 4 or 5 years, let's do that because I don't know what I'm going to look like in 4 years. So I think that's where the sticker shock is going to come in. You're going to see guys on shorter-term deals get a ton of money, and you're going to see guys that probably shouldn't have gotten long-term deals, i.e. Trent Frederick. You're going to see guys sign for a lot more years because they want to get locked in.
He did seem to indicate I don't think extensions are on the immediate horizon with Broberg, with Holloway, or with Cam Fowler. He said if Cam Fowler was 26, we'd be talking extension right now. But he's not. He's 33.
Poor
and I think maybe they learned a little bit from their experience with the Nick Leddy contract
Marcos
extension.
Scandella, too.
Maybe they're, hey, let's play this by ear. Let's see where we're at. Let's get to the end of the offseason, and maybe then we can reconvene. Broberg and Holloway, I think he knows that they're going to probably be able to get something done. There's just no reason to rush if you're the team because you have the leverage over the player. I did want to talk a little bit about the RFA situation with Joel Hofer, Alex. Mm-hmm. He answered a question on this. Here is what Doug Armstrong had to say, because I know it's become a huge topic of conversation, on the potential fear of an offer sheet for Blues backup goalie Joel Hofer.
We're not concerned about offer sheets or anything like that. We've taken the Boston Detroit approach last year when they had restricted free agents. They made sure they left enough cap space that any offer could be matched. I'm very comfortable we can match any offer if we choose to match it. It won't be we didn't match it because we couldn't afford it. We didn't match it because we thought the value we were getting back was better. So. And that value would have to start with a first-round pick, or else we'll just match it because I'm not saying we wouldn't match it with the first either, but I guess this is my shot across the bow that you can go after him, you're not going to get him.
That was the part that got me. It was like he was kind of like planting his flag and saying, like, go ahead and try. You're not going to get any of these guys with the offer sheets. And he said it later on in the immediate availability, like, we've got $15 million to work with this offseason, so money's not a factor for us right now. But in my opinion, he's right. Like, for those that are worried about Joel Hofer getting offer sheeted, I don't see a team going with a guy who has barely played over 30 games in the NHL total. They're not going to go to that player and say, let's give him $6 million in this offer sheet so we make sure that the Blues won't match it. And if the Blues see another team going in there with $6 million, is a first or a third round pick more valuable than Joel Hofer for this team? That's what they're going to weigh. They can match whatever somebody goes with. The question is going to be, is it worth matching what Joel Hofer is/projects to be versus the assets that they get in return and what the Blues could do with that
And
one?
to make this clear, $4.7 million is what it has to be, that or above, in order for them to get that first and a third, I think. Before that, it's a second-round pick for the Blues. Anything under $4.7 million would net them a second-round pick or less. I don't think somebody's going to come in and give Joel Hofer $4.7+ million. I
don't either.
So I don't think you really have to be. I think that's probably basically what Army is saying is like, hey, listen, we have $4.5 million in our cap. And so if you want to go offer sheet him for that, cool. We'll pay $10 million for our goaltenders. We're not expecting to be big players on July 1st, and that's the only way that they would really need big cap space available to them. They've got $15 million to work with, and they basically have no roster spots technically available today. So, if you want to pay $4 million for our goalie, get after it, but we're going to match whatever it is that you have.
The other factor into this thing, too, that I think people forget because the offer sheets just sound so fun, the player has to agree to sign there. Like, everybody's projecting the Edmonton Oilers to be the one that gives them an offer sheet. That's great. Why would he sign in Edmonton if he's not surely going to be the number one there?
I think the reason you would do it is if you got $5 million.
Sure, but... Exactly, but
there are 5 million reasons. But do I think that Edmonton is likely to do that? No, because they don't have the picks.
Yeah, you also
they literally don't have their picks right now.
And if you're the player, you want to know, like, if I'm on an offer sheet somewhere, I want to go somewhere that I could be the number one guy. And the deal from the Blues might be, hey, you're going to be our number one guy. It's just going to take a couple more years. So I don't even think the offer sheet is reasonable to think. So I've kind of like, look, if it happens, then we're going to be surprised by it. But for now, I look at this as they're just going to get a deal done with Joel.
All right, last thing that I wanted to get to, this also came from his conversation at the round table. I want to give credit where it is due. This is a Matthew DeFrank's question that he had. And DeFrank's asked Army up front saying, hey, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Said last year, Nashville was very good. Then they got aggressive in free agency, and they took a massive step backwards. Why are you confident that won't happen to the St. Louis Blues? That was a really good answer. Here's Doug Armstrong.
I don't want to dissect what happened in Nashville. I think what we're going to do is continue to grow with the team from last year to next year. You know, we're not looking to bring in like core pieces to change, to take over our team. So whether we backslide or not, it's going to be based on the guys that are in the room that were there last year, then us going out and bringing in 3 or 4 top-end free agents and pushing to become Dallas or the top teams in the league. We're not going to do that.
I'm glad you brought this up because that was one of the quotes that really stuck out to me where he said, we're going to continue to grow, not add core pieces. That's really what Nashville did. They had a team that fought to get into the playoffs, and then they brought in 3 new members of the core and expected everybody to just rally around those guys. That's just not where the Blues are at. That quote for me was part where I was like, okay, I don't think the John Tavares thing is going to happen. Because John Tavares, like it or not, he's kind of a core piece wherever he signs. That's a big signing that's viewed as a top 6 centerman. I don't know if that's where the Blues are at right now. It's why, if you believe the Pius Suter thing could happen, the Suter thing would make a little bit more sense because that's not a core piece you're adding. That's a role player that's coming in to fill the spot of the team. They've got their core. They've added members to the core. Now, could they go out there and find another young player that could be a part of that core? Absolutely, because Broberg and Holloway did that last year. But this is why the free agency, I don't think Sam Bennett's realistic. I don't think Ekblad's realistic. Part of me doesn't think Tavares is realistic anymore. 1, the price on day 1 of free agency, and 2, they're not looking to bring in new players that become the leaders of the locker room. They're looking for guys that emphasize the guys that are already in there.
I get you there. I would say that Nashville was just different in every possible way. They brought in Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, both of whom are top 3 players in terms of where they're at salary-wise among their forwards. Both got full no-move clauses. Then you look on the blue line, Brady Shea also got a full no-move clause as their second highest paid defenseman. That's 3 guys that came in with huge responsibility, both in terms of their on-ice production and also what they are expected to be in the locker room if you're getting a full no-move clause. The Blues, in a best-case scenario for the way that the offseason plays out, might add 1. 3 guys can change the locker room. 1 guy coming in like that, I don't know that it always does. It can change it in some ways. I don't think it changes your core, though. The way that, Nashville built a core through free agency last offseason, or at least that's what they hoped they were going to be able to do. And instead, it failed spectacularly, and all of it went in a completely wrong direction. I wouldn't completely write off the idea that the Blues could add a piece that is maybe not to the same level as those guys, but, maybe they add their Brady Shea this offseason. I don't think that changes a ton. I think that could still be something they could accomplish.
Maybe. The way that it's kind of felt for me hearing him, and this was just my thought process when he was talking, was they're going to look for somebody that can come in and just be a part of this group rather than somebody who all of the shine is going to go to that player.
Holds a big voice.
Like when Ryan O'Reilly was brought in, you may not believe he was a core member, but that was a guy that everybody looked at and was like, cool, you just added your number 1 center.
Agreed. How many players on the market actually fit into that category?
I think Tavares does. I think Bennett does. And I think Ekblad does.
Yeah.
And I don't know how realistic
I don't think Bennett
are.
or Ekblad are realistic at all.
Yeah.
Tavares is the one that I just don't know.
The only reason I think Tavares would sign, and this is why I don't know if it would affect the team, the only reason I think Tavares would sign in St. Louis, and it's a very small percentage of belief, is you're going to a market where you don't have to be the guy. You were the guy for the longest time. Minnesota would make a whole lot of sense for Tavares because that team has Stanley Cup aspirations, and you're going to a team as a big signing, especially after them just getting out of all their buyout deals with Suter and Parise. That would be my only reasoning why. And if Tavares is doing that, then you fit in to where you're not trying to be the face of the guy. But like a Bennett or an Ekblad, if they sign, if they even hit the market, those guys come in, all of the focus is on them, and that's where it can start to cause some hiccups.
All of that audio from our conversation with Doug Armstrong can be found over on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN after the show today. Super easy podcasting over there, or if you just want to listen to it in its audio form, you can do that. 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app. The podcast is always sponsored by
Shaver Door Company.
Coming up next, we'll put a bow on this thing, hit the rewind, and preview tonight's game between the Cubs and the Cardinals. First time we've seen this all season long. We give you our preview next year on 101 ESPN.
This Saturday, Cardinals and Guardians. Pre-game at 2:30, first pitch 3:10. The MLB plays on 101 ESPN. BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center on 101 ESPN. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Lou, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Cardinals versus Cubs tonight. First time in 89 days this season that we will see these two teams meet on the field. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. You got a couple of advantages going into this one, Alex. Matthew Liberatore is on the mound. He was solid in his most recent outing. And their lineup is much like yours. It is kind of lefty heavy. Guys at the top of it, Ian Happ is pretty good against lefties, but Pete Crow Armstrong, for example, huge splits so far this season. Against left-handed pitchers, he's only batting 185. That's one of the best hitters in their lineup, so you are able to hopefully keep him at bay tonight. They also have Ben Brown on the mound, who is their weakest of the starters that you'll see. I know I said this, T-Bone, on our podcast last week, and I feel the same way going into this thing. I know it's so simplistic. Get off to a hot start. You got to get off to a hot start. You got to win this first game of the series to be able to put yourself in an advantageous situation, Alex. How you feeling going in?
Yeah, I feel good about it, especially with Liberatore on the mound. Like, he's one of the guys, and I know he had a little bit of a rocky go for a couple of starts, but he's one of the guys I feel comfortable in when he steps on the mound. This does feel like one of those two where you have to capitalize on the confidence you have right now. Even though you came off of that loss against the Reds, you had won 5 straight previously. You found ways to win, even if it wasn't the prettiest route. This does feel like the game that is the tone setter for the Cardinals, and then from there, what happens the rest of the way. And that's the part I'm fascinated by, because 3 of the 4 starters in this series, with Liberatore, Palante, and McGreevy, like, these are 3 guys that I think the Cardinals are really searching for answers for in terms of a part of our future. What do you look like against that type of offense? That's what I'm going to be most honed in on.
Yeah, I feel good about them coming into tonight, because the offense, outside of getting shut down by a guy that going to be in the Cy Young conversation yesterday, was pretty good against the Cincinnati Reds. They had a little bit of that comeback kid in them again. I feel good going up in this matchup. My biggest question mark tonight, at least, is Liberatore. I mean, I don't feel comfortable right now with him on the mound, and I know he pitched well against the White Sox. That's the White Sox. That should have been a get-right start. This is the one where, okay, if that was real, I'll know tonight, because this is no joke of a lineup against the Chicago Cubs.
Watch out for Seiya Suzuki. That guy is really, 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 really good against left-handed pitchers. OPS over 1,100 on the season. He has 8 home runs in 72 at-bats against lefties so far on the season.
Suzuki
Be careful with
tonight.
him. Go ahead and attack, beat Crow Armstrong. That's where you can find your outs. Swanson has not been particularly good against lefties. He's just not been very good overall, honestly. Swanson, Crow Armstrong, that's where you attack. Tucker, Suzuki, that is where you stay away.
Good.
You need to walk them, you walk them, but you do not give in. Do not give in those at-bats. Alex,
It's okay to be a coward.
what is your prediction tonight's game? Cards versus Cubs, Busch Stadium, 6:45.
Oh, man, because we feel like it's a game that they have to win, it makes me a little worried. I'll say 4-3 Cards win.
I think this is going to be an offensive shootout tonight. I'm going Cardinals 7-5.
Ooh, I had 6-4. Cardinals find a way to win tonight
This is
at
going to be
Busch
a
Stadium.
5-3 Cubs win, isn't it?
Should be a lot of fun. Enjoy the game tonight. If you missed any of our conversation with Doug Armstrong or Katie Wu, you can check that out on the podcast page after the show today. For Bradford Bruns, who did a fantastic job for us back in the studio, Doty, who allowed us to be on the air today, which is kind of important, and Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Before the goals, the glory, the game winners, it all starts here. The 2025 NHL Draft. Tune in this Friday evening starting at 6 for 101 ESPN's NHL Draft Show live from Enterprise Center with Chris Kerber and Alex Ferrario. The future of hockey is about to be written one name at a time, and you can listen to it live on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN.